Tell you, God bless Acrobat. No matter how many times I stop its service, it still starts off somewhere. There's just no way of killing that service. It's like a Terminator. It's just relentless. I don't know how many other ways I can kill the Acrobat updater service. It just comes back. Hello and welcome. My name is Richard Simon. I am Cloud Therapist. First, I wish all my subscribers a Happy New Year. I hope you've all enjoyed your Christmas break, whatever you were doing. And I certainly hope that 2026 is going to be a healthy and prosperous year for you all. To anyone else watching this video, welcome. I hope you're going to enjoy this particular talk. I hope you enjoy it so much to actually consider maybe subscribing to the channel as well. That would be really appreciated. I have a great set of information for you, all set out for 2026. We're going to be talking all about the predictions for this year from various people. So make sure that you watch the whole video to get everything and learn all about what's coming up in this particular year. So in the January 2026 episode of Cloud State of Play, which is what this is, we traditionally kind of do a projections episode. So this is where we basically look at and get a chance to look at some of the projections that we did last year for 2025, but also we focus on the upcoming year and see what's actually in store for us in 2026. As always, I have the perennial Paul Bevan with me. Paul is now retired, not retired. That's his title, folks. So we'll have to get used to that for 2026. I won't say anything more about that. But yeah, let's welcome Paul first. Paul, how are you doing? Happy New Year.
I'm fine. Yeah, Happy New Year to you and everybody else who's watching. Yeah, doing fine. Looking forward to the year. See what it brings up. I think it will be an interesting ride this year.
Fantastic. So do you have a good Christmas and break, or is that kind of long distant memory now?
It does seem a long way back, but yeah, a lovely time. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Okay, so you're ready for another 12 episodes of Cloud State of Play for the year.
As I'll ever be.
As you'll ever be. Yeah. Actually, Paul and I are going to be hopefully doing a little bit more stuff for 2026. So watch out for some of the other videos that we'll be working on together. I'm not sure Paul knows all the details yet, but everything will be revealed at some point.
Now you know why I'm retired, not retired.
Exactly. Yes, that's one of the reasons why you're the not retired part of the retired aspect of it. Okay. So as I said earlier, we don't do predictions. We do projections. And there's a good reason why we actually do projections in this particular episode of Cloud State of Play. Now, if you want to know the difference between those, I'll try and drop something in the description of the video. So do go and check that out. We try to kind of focus on projections. I think we feel that's kind of a much better way to actually do things. But suffice to say that those who do make the predictions do kind of stick their neck out, a little bit more when you're doing that rather than projections. So good luck to them, and we will be critiquing all of that as we go forward. Okay, so normally we don't kind of really do a bunch of categories for our projections, but we thought we'd kind of maybe just coalesce some of the ideas around a number of categories for this year. So we've come up with a bunch of those, and I'll try and go through those with you in a moment. Okay, so for this particular episode of Cloud State of Play, the January 2026 projections episode with Paul Bevan, the categories that we've going to go for the projections are 1, DevOps and platform engineering, 2, generative AI, so really kind of having a collective view of that. Number 3, observability. Number 4, cloud repatriation or sovereignty. I think those two kind of seem to be combining. We'll explain a little bit more about that later. Number 5, Supercloud, or really any other category, or whether anything else Paul may have to bring in Paul's choice in that number 5. And number 6, cloud security and networking. Again, much underrated. Number 7, open source software and cloud native. So again, we'll maybe look at some areas around those. And number 8, cloud economics. That's things like FinOps and cost management and so on. Number 9, cloud data management, cloud data storage, and cloud data fabric. So all of those kind of things all put together and focusing on different areas of those. Number 10, data center. So again, data center is kind of coming back a lot this year, folks. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Number 11, mergers and acquisitions, or M&A. And then number 12, we'll look at some of the IT industry predictions, some of the pundits and analysts and consulting houses and kind of what they've come up with as well. So those are our 12 categories. I don't think we're going to be able to do many of these reports and predictions justice, but our projections certainly will be along the way, as part of the discussion. Let's see what we come up with on that. But before we do that, here is a quick channel message for you. Did you know that 80% of you watching right now aren't subscribed yet to this channel? Come on, guys, we can do better, surely. So please hit subscribe and the notification bell. It costs nothing, but it really helps me to keep making more videos for you. All right, back to the therapy session. Now, before we go on to the 2026 projections, let's actually have a quick look at our projections for 2025 and how did we do? So looking back at our projections for 2025, let's do a quick review of that, guys. In the DevOps and platform engineering space, we said there would be probably more erosion of development roles, development jobs. Easily by the end of the year, we said the junior developer role will be threatened by automation. I guess to a large degree that has happened, but it's not really happened from kind of the AI code gen space, but more actually from things like vibe coding. I think that's kind of where that seems to be coming in from. And that's kind of, I think, what we'll see what happens in 2026, right? In generative AI, unfortunately, my aiml ideas, that's the AI model economics, as I called it, hasn't happened or didn't happen in 2025. I'm hoping that something along those lines will come into 2026, but we'll see. AGI never came about. I think we discussed this a little bit as well. So that's not really one of the projections for 2025. But certainly now been put out to something like 2030 or 2035, according to some of the articles and reports that we picked up on. If you actually want to get more information on that, and by the way, that does sound reasonable. And if you do want to get some more information on that, look at the Cloud State of Play episode for, I think, July 2025 that I did with Sarah Bonin, and you'll see some discussion around AGI in one of the reports that we looked at there. Now, in terms of Agentic AI, we were talking, I think, about AI agents maybe doomed to fail in 2025. At least that was one of the Newsstack articles that appeared last year. And yes, I mean, I think the issues that we had in 2025 will continue in 2026. It still kind of gets better. So things like the lack of true autonomy and kind of limited reasoning, integration issues for the agents, data still remains largely siloed, so it's kind of difficult for agents to get to it. The hype versus reality, so kind of people talk about agentic AI, but really we're just kind of looking at AI agents. So yeah, I think largely the projections I think that we had were relatively good. I think they were sort of true. AI agents or agentic AI kind of remains as a hype, and AI agents have kind of really come in a lot more. But again, not as kind of standalone, although you can kind of look at Clawbot and various other ones, but more of a kind of an augmentation to existing applications. So that's kind of really what's happened, I think, in 2025. And again, largely similar to what happened to Gen AI in general back in 2023 and 2024, mainly. So actually, all of that sort of AI stuff is augmenting existing application platforms. So it's not kind of AI agents running around your network, doing stuff all by themselves. It's actually within certain applications. Now, we also, I think, mentioned Gemini versus intelligence. Well, actually, that's kind of turned on its head, because obviously Apple has signed with Google and to effectively make Gemini the new Siri. So that's been a surprise. That was certainly not part of, I think, any predictions or projections from anybody from last year. Observability, more conformity to open standards like OTel. We haven't really seen a great deal more of that. I think there's been some adoption around that. But what we didn't, I think, see is the likes of Gartner and others pushing Gen AI to actually come into the AI ops space. So effectively kind of making that Gen AI ops, as I would call it. So that's interesting, and I think that's quite welcome. Around cloud repatriation, what cloud repatriation? We've not really seen a lot of that. It's kind of largely been forgotten because of things like AI agents kind of taking center stage on on those things. So yeah, and I don't want to kind of go into the whole sort of cloud repatriation debate here, but to me it's been kind of put to one side, just like sustainability has been over the last 2 years or so. Supercloud, I think the only difference that I saw here, there's certainly all the usual tools that we mentioned for 2025, but the new one that I kind of picked up on a little bit more in 2025 was HPE's Morpheus. So again, I saw a demo of that, and I may be able to do something with that on the channel in the future. We'll see. But that was interesting, definitely. In terms of open source, open source has kind of put itself into the into the middle of the sort of the Gen AI space. So again, it's kind of making or trying to make sort of Kubernetes the de facto standard way to really do Gen AI. And we said that effectively open source will get a shot in the arm from Gen AI models being open sourced and it's becoming kind of the standard platform for doing Gen AI. And I guess that's largely right. So I think we got that projection quite right there. Cloud economics, as I said earlier, AIML never happened. So my AI sort of model economics didn't really happen. FinOps is kind of largely gone the same way as it was kind of doing the last few years. I did attend an event actually by Flexera, I think in 2025, and the focus from them on FinOps was bringing ITAM and SAM, so that's software asset management, I believe that's what that stands for, into the into the FinOps category, or into the FinOps fold. And I found that really a strange thing to focus on. I would have really kind of gone more around cloud cost optimization, continuous profiling, and really embracing those as part of this sort of the FinOps movement. But anyway, what do I know? Cloud data management, number 9. We tried to kind of make some sense of how enterprise is going to be preparing their data for Gen AI projects. I spoke to DataOps Live and Snowflake, and that discussion I think is still ongoing. And the whole sort of managing data, preparing it for AI and so on, I think has continued to be a difficulty, a challenge for enterprises, and quite nebulous in terms of how you achieve that. So again, largely correct in terms of the projection for that there would still be challenges in cloud data management. I think we talked about the state of data report from is it Hakoda in 2025. We may look at this again for this year, so we'll see kind of whether anything's changed, and then hopefully more insights from the videos around Big Data London 2025, which I have recorded some footage for. So if you're watching this much later, it should already be out on the channel, or if you're just watching this as I've released this particular video, then watch out for that later on in 2026. I did a review interview with Dr. Joe Perez at Big Data London 2025. So again, that review will be coming out on the channel. Watch out for that. In terms of competing, well, Intel didn't get broken up. We said that would get probably broken up for in 2025. It might still happen, you never know. So maybe we're just kind of a bit too premature on that. But they kind of seem to be trying to fight back a little bit. So I guess that's good. But we'll see what happens with that. But certainly no breakup of Intel yet. Okay. And then we talked about NVIDIA will continue its dominance in 2025. That certainly was true. That projection was correct. And we said we may see some new startup contenders coming in. So we didn't really see anybody kind of in massive sort of terms appearing. But certainly the likes of ASML and NVIDIA's investment in Grok. So that's G-R-O-Q, not G-R-O-K. So not the XAI kind of models and so on, but the company called Grok, G-R-O-Q. NVIDIA invested $20 billion in that, and that was in 2025, late 2025, and that is a inference company. So we did mention inference would come in a lot more, so we were actually right in that particular projection, and I think that investment by NVIDIA into Grok is an affirmation of that. So I think that's kind of the main highlights of it. Now let's get back to the main video. So our first category for the projections of 2026 is DevOps and platform engineering. Now, I picked on the platform engineering org. They came up with I think top 10 predictions for 2026 in platform engineering, and considering that really everybody is kind of abandoning DevOps these days and talking more about platform engineering, we thought we'll kind of maybe focus on that. Now, again, I'm not going to be able to do this actual report justice. We'll drop the link in the description of the video. Paul, let me kind of get you started maybe on that, or any sort of general observation around platform engineering, and then I'll maybe come in with a few points from the platform engineering org's predictions.
Well, it's not really a great area of sort of focus or expertise for me, so I should be careful about what I say here. I've always taken the view that DevOps was really more about the developers than it was about operations. And I think, in your discussions with me around platform engineering during the course of last year, I think we came to understand that actually this is getting a more architected approach towards doing things. And so, yeah, I agree. I think, DevOps as a sort of term is probably going to disappear over time, I think, particularly with, you get machine learning coming in, and we're talking about what platform engineering is going to do in the coming year in terms of pulling in the whole sort of AI, machine learning operations type space into it. And there'll be a theme that comes out, I think, across the year too, around this is the year that everybody needs to get to grips with the sort of implications of speed versus inertia, and
Right.
we'll come back and discuss that later. So from my perspective, I won't be sorry to see the back of the term DevOps, put it like that.
Yeah. I think everybody's I think everybody's kind of pretty much in agreement on that. I mean, it's I don't really necessarily care what they call it, but I think the kind of the guiding principles of what Agile and DevOps originally, the original DevOps kind of wanted to achieve, are still important. Now, I don't know whether platform engineering specifically is the right way to go, but looking at the platform engineering, because we're not kind of here to philosophically discuss that, but platform engineering orgs sort of predictions, they get everything from really sort of agentic infrastructure, they say, becomes standard architecture. Platforms become the safety net for AI generated code, which I do agree with.
I agree with that.
I think that's kind of be the catch-all sort of aspect of it. Self-healing evolves into kind of self-architecture. Yes, I think we might see a little bit of that kind of dynamic reconfiguration of infrastructure for cost efficiency, they say. DevOps and ML ops converge. Yes, I would agree with that as well. It's kind of all becomes, ML ops really becomes kind of part of the workflows that you have in DevOps. FinOps becomes a hard requirement. I would probably say it actually needs to be integrated. It's kind of part of the architecture, or that at least that sort of cloud economics aspect of it is anyway. So those are kind of
I agree with you on that one. And particularly when I read that, it's almost like the sort of AI version of the CFO says no.
Yeah.
And it was no, it's not a separate standalone. It really needs to be embedded in. And
yes,
as you say, we're not going to discuss the whys and wherefores today, but maybe they'll come back round the loop on that.
Yeah, and I think it may not be something that you have to do in FinOps or FinOps's APIs or Cloud Cost Management's API specifically. It actually may be just policy as code that will do that. So our sort of established, sort of pack capabilities that we've had may be able to dictate that sort of whole cost management and cloud economics thing. So it gets architected as policy as code, not as specifically kind of FinOps. I'd certainly want to see that for this year. But yeah, platform engineering, orgs that are a full comprehensive report. Like I said, those were kind of some of the main areas there. And then it says, things like the platforms become existential. I guess I don't think we have a way to maybe get around that. And things like compliance shifts to governance by default. Yeah, but I mean, these are all part of the standardization of platform engineering anyway, that PE brings in anyway. So and certainly the rise of things like certification and professional attainment emerges as well for this year. So yeah, you will probably see more PE certified people than maybe kind of DevOps engineer type roles as well. Okay, so that's the first category. Now, second category, generative AI. I don't know where to start with that one. Well, let's start with Google actually did a Google AI Agents Trends 2026 report. Now, again, this is quite a heavy PDF document. I think, as we've noticed, Google tends to do. So lots of lovely graphics on the side, and then some text on the other side of the page. And this is kind of really focusing more on AI agents, and I think it's maybe a good category to go with. Paul, did you get a chance to have a look at that, or anything else in this specific category for you about Gen AI?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that the focus is going to be on agentic AI this year, and I think that's a given. And I think there's a lot of barriers that agentic AI has got together. Because I was looking at a particular Dynatrace sort of set of topics that they were talking about for 2026, and one of the things that they mentioned in part of their system, their sort of review and sort of look forward, was getting to grips with the error rates when you start merging AI, making AI agents, agentic AI work in sort of concert.
Right.
And I think we've, back in something we talked about last year, I probably pointed you at a article that one of my colleagues at Bloor, Andy Haler, had written around the sort of compound effect of agentic AI working in sort of concert has, that you sort of compound the error rates and it gets a bit hairy. And it was interesting to get somebody who's a company that's actually working closely in the area to use agents in a sort of, and we'll come on to observability later. So I think just looking at and I did get a good look at the Google report. As you say, it's sort of fairly heavy, needs a fair amount of thing. But I think the issue is, and there's a Deloitte projections too that sort of says it's worth X billion by 2030, quote unquote, as long as organizations and vendors deal with the orchestration issues.
That's a big if.
That's a big if. So again, I think
and very broad as well.
Very broad.
Kind of very...
Oh yeah, but fundamentally, we're going to get this year a lot of people saying it's the year of agentic AI. Yeah. And there'll be another side saying, yeah, but only if you get the data right, the orchestration right, all the sorts of the security right, all those sort of things. And so I'm less. I still, it's going to happen. I'm slightly skeptical of how quickly that will happen in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the real year for AI agents. I think I don't even want to hear about agentic AI because that's just so far out. People are kind of throwing in the term marketing and all the LinkedIn, shills and influencers and what have you, but I think it's a load of nonsense. So I think it's AI agents and actually making AI agents work. Last year we discovered AI agents in 2025. I think this year we're actually going to have a go at making them work. And the report from Google about AI agent trends for this year. So it says agents for every employee. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's nonsense. That's one of the points. Agents for every workflow, maybe, but I think only workflows that are within a particular app that you're using. So your, DevOps, platform engineering, your CI/CD, or your observability, kind of that auto remediation that we talked about, and things like that. So it's kind of operates, it springs up, it operates, it does something, and then it switches off again, or just sits there and waits for the next event. Not something that's just continuously going, oh yeah, and I found you a cheaper holiday, or actually have you found an even cheaper holiday? Oh, actually I found you an even cheaper holiday. So you started it in New York, and then you kind of actually found you one in Cairo, and then another one in, and it's not going to do that. I think it's not that kind of sort of agent capability, but it's more for employees specifically, you already have Copilot. So maybe the proliferation of things like Copilot and what they would probably hope to be in a Google Workspace with with Gemini and things like that. But generally speaking, I think you're just going to see it in that type of activity for point one. Point two, for the workflows, like I said, I think it's going to be within a particular workflow, not kind of just a generic one that you just throw at whatever you want it to do and kind of say, oh yeah, I can run whatever workflow you want. No. It's the workflow that does the auto remediation within my observability tool. It's the workflow that calculates my the security within my DevOps CI/CD pipeline, or something like that. So it's going to be doing specific jobs within something, and you could call that a workflow. But I think it's not going to be kind of just a generic agent that just does you can throw it at any workflow. I think that's not really. I just don't feel that that's kind of how this is going to operate.
I think what we're going to hear a lot more about in 2026 is the term intent. Intent-based. We talked about trying to get business and technology to work better together, and this whole idea of you use the business intent to drive the workflow, to drive the agent, to give you an outcome and an output that is business oriented. So get it to the intent. And back to the employee one, I think there's some interesting things going on there, in the sense that it's got to be in 2026 about how you make it easier for the if you have to spend too much time working out how to make your agent work for you, employees are not going to use it. And users are not, end users, consumers are not going to use it, as witnessed by some of the disappointing figures for AI PCs. They're going, I don't really want to get involved in, having to, to program my flipping PC to give me what I want in terms of a workflow.
And I mean, again, there's always a consumer side of this, right, Paul? So there's always the consumer version of these things, and whether I don't know whether that comes through. I'm not really sure. We'll see how that works out.
I mean, and again, we're doing projections, not predictions, but again, we've seen how consumerization has driven technology over the last probably 20 years. And I still think it'll play here. Whether it plays to quite the same degree, I don't know.
Yeah. And there's a lot more in the Google AI Agents Trends 2026 report, guys. Again, link in the description for that. They go on to talk about agents for your customers. They talk about agents for security. So agents will evolve security operations by automating threat detection, triage, and response. I mean, I like the idea of, we talked about this under observability, right? And even I think in some of our previous episodes, we talked about, Gartner's sort of advocating for the same thing about, auto remediation or taking actions, proactive actions on things. So this whole kind of, detection, triage, and response, reducing alert fatigue and so on. Yeah, that's fine. I think that's quite welcome. That kind of, elevating human analysts to strategic defenders and so on. That's all fine. I think that all makes sense. But yeah, I just feel that it's going to be still embedded. It's not one of those things where you just set it off on your network and you just say, okay, I'll just put my feet up and make a cup of tea or coffee and come back later and it'll all be done for me. It'll be, within a particular workflow. I think that's how it's going to work. Okay, and then we had another one in this space from Andreas Horn, who is the IBM head of AI Ops. Now, I'd probably say to Andreas first, you need to your title change to Gen AI Ops. That's probably the first thing to do. But he's come up with his own list as well, sort of top 8 predictions. So these went from Agentic AI will evolve from simple workflows to solving complex multi-step problems. I don't agree with that. Scientific, as we just said that. Scientific acceleration focuses on AI-assisted hypothesis. Sure, as we get more compute and AI factories, improved inference time, computing, sure, because we're talking a lot more about inference this year. Very large language models will scale to 50 trillion parameters. I don't really care about that as a benchmark war. Small, efficient, domain-specific AI models will grow in use. I guess so. I mean, SLMs for agents is kind of really the answer to that, I guess. Advanced AI use cases like AI Ops will proactively manage and resolve complex IT operations. Now, this is very close to what you and I have been talking about, Gen AI Ops, right? And that's why I said, Andreas, change your title. Gen AI Ops is a new term, or at least that's the term I'm using. And you heard it here, folks. Heard it here first. So I do agree with that. What's your take on those points?
Well, I think that last one, you're right. We did talk about it, and we're going to move into that in observability in a minute, I think. But the large language model versus the small language model, I think, is an interesting one.
Yeah.
How much, my view actually is I'm going the opposite way to you, I think, in the sense that I think small language models will be quite a growth area in 2026, and particularly for organizations, as they want to train agents, if they want to train and orchestrate agentic AI, and they are concerned around security, they're concerned around the privacy of their own data, I think they will use SLMs more and more. And I think we'll start to see a lot more of that they'll feed a lot of their corporate data in. Because a lot of LLMs at the moment, of course, aren't getting corporate data. So I think the SLMs will be about how do I maximize, and I can think of a number of areas, which way too long a discussion to go into now, where corporations, whether they're in the public or the private sectors, really could improve their operations no end by getting loading up SLMs with all the corporate data and really starting to make it work for them.
Right. Yeah. We'll see how that goes. I mean, those are two of the kind of the main ones that we had in that category, guys. So again, links in the description of the video. Check those out. But I think for me, it's definitely, AI agents actually becoming integrated and being useful. I think the whole sort of Gen AI, like I said, sort of, model wars and whatever you want to call them, will continue the benchmarking and so on. Not going to see anything like AGI or ASI this year, despite what you might hear elsewhere. I think even some of the analyst firms have kind of put that out to another 5 to 10 years. Same thing really for kind of quantum and sort of a whole, quantum and Gen AI sort of combination. I think you'll maybe see some modest sort of capabilities, but again, even quantum is another sort of 5 to 10 years out. I think on that. But yeah, certainly a lot more kind of actual use of AI agents. That's kind of really what I see as the predominant thing for this year. And as we said, and as we've been saying for a number of episodes now, Gen AI Ops, we want observability to, pull up its socks and be able to do auto remediation, but also do the AI Ops part of it by bringing in Gen AI as part of that. For that and a lot more, we've covered this in the past previous episodes. Again, I'll try and include some stuff for you in the description of the video. Okay, category 3 is observability, Paul. Now, I shared with you a number of sort of predictions for this year. The one I picked on was really logs.io. I kind of wanted to highlight Asaf Yigal, who is the co-founder and VP of product engineering, I think, at logs.io. So he's kind of done his predictions, and the top 4 kind of items I picked up on is AI in dev and observability is post the first hype. Yeah, I agree with that, I guess. It's kind of a little bit further. Engineering teams understand that AI is not going to do everything anytime soon, I guess. So that's kind of one of the points. Second one is AI and observability workflows. Now, we already said that. Again, this is converging to our point. Number 3, observability intelligence layer. So this is, again, I think, the Gen AI ops sort of description. And then observability expands to new roles. Now, he's saying organizations understand that AI lowers the barrier to understanding and analyzing data. So in 2026, AI will be used to explore data, ask questions. There we go. This is what I was saying about me being able to ask questions of my observability platform. Paul, what's your take on it?
I think that is very much the next, if you like, the next frontier that they've got to get over. You literally, we've been talking about, AI ops being able to predict, problems coming up or being, and all those sort of things. And really, it hasn't happened. It's still glorified, reducing sort of ticket load, etc., all that sort of stuff, rather than real predictions about what's going on. And I think that ability to say, tell me where I've got a particular risk at the moment, and also tell me what's not quite working properly, which could cause problems downstream. And we're not even seeing that properly.
Right.
But the other area too, and this is sort of, you come at it from logs.io and versus Dynatrace and Grafana Labs, is this whole thing about what was observability about originally, and I'm not going to go back to networks because that's where the observability piece originally came from, but that's historic now, and I leave it out. But observability has been very much a DevOps type, how the heck do we, manage that CI/CD pipeline and see what's going on in it?
Right.
And yet, you've 2 out of 3 of the pieces you put up are actually from people who are in what I call IT operations monitoring. It's not, and that's where they came from. Dynatrace, Grafana Labs, etc.
Sure.
They've come from that sort of monitoring space and moved into it, and we discussed this in 2025, probably ad nauseum, in that it's become a very misunderstood term, and everybody's using observability. And for goodness sake, what are we going to do to get around that? And I'm not sure what the answer is to that, but certainly what you just highlighted at the end, this whole ability to say, what do I need to be worried about today and tomorrow? It's almost the thing that you want to do, rather than oh dear, it happened, now tell me how to fix it.
Absolutely.
It's still there, and I mean, I've got a call with Big Panda later today, and it'd be interesting to see where they're at with this one.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the other 2 that we quite rightly we picked on was Dynatrace. They have a 2026 predictions by a guy called Bernd Greifender. Apologies if I'm butchering that. He's a chief innovator at Dynatrace, I believe. So he's talking about why agentic AI observability is imperative. And again, that's all converging to the same points, really. Putting AI into observability, specifically generative AI into observability. And he kind of comes up with 5 or 6 points as well. So agentic AI introduces unprecedented system complexity, requiring strong observability and governance. Yes, I guess that makes sense. Enterprise will progress through maturity stages of automation, predictive operations, supervised autonomy, and so on before achieving fully autonomous operations. Goes on to talk about resilience, defined as a system's ability to absorb disruption and recover quickly, will become the key benchmark for operational excellence. Again, I think we've disagreed on that in the past because we said it's high availability, not resilience. And then reliable AI foundations with deterministic grounding and end-to-end observability are essential to prevent compounded errors in complex agentic systems. I think this is kind of focusing a lot more on managing AI agents and Gen AI models than actually kind of observability, in general. But fair enough. I think that's kind of the focus that this guy from Dynatrace is offering.
I think that one of the challenges I think we've got in this whole space is that there's a whole area of that that's become very much a commoditized environment. And what we're seeing is a number of organizations, and Dynatrace is one of them, trying to carve out specific new niches for themselves. So I think it's going to get slightly confusing again. That's the problem. How you manage agentic AI is a very separate discussion. I think it's closer clearly to application monitoring and application observability than it is to IT ops. So I think we're going to have to be careful about where we see this happening, because it'll just will lose the will to live, I think, if they keep marrying it all together.
Yeah, and there needs to be a distinction between using AI or Gen AI in observability and observability observing or monitoring Gen AI.
Yes,
yeah?
absolutely.
I think I'm kind of not a conflation yet, but I'm seeing a little bit of that. And you know what the influencers are like? They're going to pick that up and just run with it this year.
Yeah, no, you've actually articulated that much better than I did, because that's exactly what I was trying to get at.
So I think that's kind of there. Now, the one I wanted to mention from Grafana Labs predictions, and again, they've come up with their own, again, link in the description, guys. Open telemetry will become the universal standard for the telemetry data collection. Now, I've been waiting for this for years, since really Open Telemetry or OTel came out. And I really want to see that happening this year. And for the OTel team to actually adapt Open Telemetry to adopt this whole Gen AI and auto remediation stuff that we've been talking about. Get it to the point where you're saying, I think this is what you should do, Dynatrace, or I think this is what you should do, Prometheus, and then leave it to the actual tools, Datadog, Big Panda, whoever it is, to actually then say, yes, I will take that action, or no, I'll ask the user first to see what they want to do. Yeah. Or if that's kind of automated already, yes, the user told me to do that, so I will do that. Thank you, Open Telemetry. I'll go do that. Right. But I want Open Telemetry to take it to that point, not just to say, oh yeah, we now have Gen AI built in, or now we can monitor Gen AI, as we've been saying, that sort of juxtaposition there. But I actually wanted Open Telemetry to take it to that level, to say, you should now go and take an action on this. That's the recommendation from OTel. Yeah, and then it's down to the tool from Big Panda, Dynatrace, Datadog, whoever it is, to take it from there to its logical conclusion.
I think there's probably a step that comes between that for this year, which is making sure that the vendors really do double down on Open Telemetry as the way in which they ingest the original data. Because we've still got a situation where, people are getting, SDKs, or they have their own particular APIs for getting data, ingesting data. And you think, no, if we're going to make this sensible, everybody needs to go down that Open Telemetry route. And then I think you can start saying, all right, now take it to the next level.
Agreed. Okay, let's move on to the fourth category, which was cloud repatriation and sovereignty. Now, we're going to have a field day on this because we picked up on so much stuff. But I think the message for cloud repatriation And our usual sort of objections to that really still stand. We've not yet seen sort of a proper, cloud repatriation. But I think what's going to happen is that this year it will morph to certain elements of sovereignty. Now, I'll explain why that is, because cloud repatriation kind of indirectly says, you're by kind of taking things in, you're kind of ticking some sovereignty boxes as well, because you've taken that workload in-house, you're running in your own data center or a managed service or colo or whatever it is. So I think default by doing that, for either an alleged cloud repatriation or an actual sovereignty requirement, you are essentially achieving the same thing, which is kind of, avoiding that sort of vendor lock-in. Now, if you look at it from a sovereignty point of view, I would look at that as an attempt to do some cloud abstraction. That's essentially what you're doing when you're trying to avoid vendor lock-in, right? From a sovereignty point of view, it's a cloud abstraction. You're taking away from the cloud, from the hyperscaler, from the public cloud, a whole bunch of services and things that you're doing, whether it's at the kind of the control plane layer or the actual application layer. You're taking those out of there. Because you're taking them out of there, obviously you're not locked into that vendor anymore. And that allows you to kind of create this cloud abstraction layer. I will try and provide a chart on this somewhere on the screen, which I have advocated for elsewhere. And this allows you to, gain control over a lot of the activities that you've been doing so far within the cloud environment. So that by default gives you kind of a checkbox or two in that sovereignty space. But I'll stop there and let you make a comment, Paul.
Well, I mean, yes, sovereignty is growing as a topic, and we're seeing all the hyperscalers announcing more and more sovereign clouds, I think is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
For me, the issue is around data, is not around the control plane. I think the issue is around data and what happens to it. That's what's driven it. That's where people get really uptight. Where does my data reside? Who can get to grips with my data? It came out of public sector probably most strongly first, but it's sort of grown in intensity. And in today's sort of political climate, global political climate, it's got a head of steam in it. But to me, it's a data thing. But I always find the whole issue of sovereign clouds slightly bizarre in the first place, because the cloud is not a place.
Yeah.
And even if you have a sovereign cloud, how do you make sure that when you have the communications, you don't have somebody hack into the car?
Yeah.
There's too many different ways in which that can be minimum. The whole impact of sovereign data is just lost. We are totally globally connected. I find the whole area slightly strange.
You can't really have a sovereign internet, can you?
No. So
I think,
and you can't really have sovereign clouds, I don't think. But it's almost, in my sense, a sort of a non sequitur. It doesn't really follow.
Yeah.
Having said that, of course, the whole sort of clamor around, what's going on with data privacy and breakdown of international law, all those sort of things, means that you're going to get more of this. You will get more of this in 2026. But I think it's one of those. It's a sticking plaster. I don't think it's really doing anything particularly useful.
Yes.
You couldn't do with what you were talking about, the control plane and managing that, because you're going to be open to the same sort of issues. And so it's just another opportunity for the big hyperscalers to say, hey, it's okay, I've got a data center in
a solution.
the country. Yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot here to unpack, and obviously we're not going to get a chance to, to do that within this particular category. I think the main point here was just to say that, that sort of what was termed as cloud repatriation is kind of probably going to morph into certain aspects of, cloud sovereignty for this, and sovereign AI, which is another sort of area as well. So we'll see probably a lot more sort of focus on sovereignty and elements that we were, people were saying they wanted to do in cloud repatriation actually surfacing in the sort of sovereignty space. And as we said, things like vendor lock-in kind of becoming a cloud abstraction approach. Now, whether the merits of that's a separate thing, but in terms of sovereignty, you're right, it's data. The other thing is operations, which we've again mentioned in the past, and compute, of course. So those are the three things. Now, how do you actually achieve that, as you said? I think that's a kind of a multifaceted, multi-layered, hierarchical sort of debate that can be had, and we'll probably have that debate separately. But yes, again, you're right in terms of everybody's jumped on the sovereignty bandwagon. So you've had the announcement from AWS for the European Sovereign Cloud, or ESC. You've had a similar announcement from Microsoft, the Azure Sovereign Cloud. IBM announced recently, actually in the same week as I think AWS, IBM Sovereign Core. I have no idea what that is. It kind of seems to be more focused on software. Again, we'll maybe look at that in the future. Google has been doing sovereignty. So the Google Sovereign Cloud with T-Systems, my boys. They've been doing that for a number of years. We've been doing that with them for a number of years. So Google Sovereign Cloud. And obviously other vendors as well, all throwing in their sort of their hat into the ring as far as this is concerned. And this is kind of all happening at the same time. Now, there's also been some standards announced. I think the EU announced a sovereignty standard. It I have to say it was like based on an A4 piece of paper, so not hugely detailed as far as I know. But again, we may have a look at that in the future. And then you've had things like entities like Eurostack, which I think seems to be, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it seems to be a consortium of securing, says we are there to, well, their description says securing and deploying core tech for Europe's autonomy and resilience as a grassroots initiative. Now, I can tell you, there's no love lost between Eurostack and AWS. Eurostack's response to the AWS ESC, the European Sovereign Cloud, was Europe does not, and I quote, Europe does not need sovereign hyperscalers. And then they go on to slag off the AWS ESC for a whole bunch of negatives as to why it's not the right choice. So it is. So they say digital sovereignty is not digital. Data sovereignty, sorry, is not digital sovereignty. So they say it's not it's architected elsewhere, is controlled elsewhere, strategically aligned with non-European interests, economically extracting value out of Europe. So there's a whole bunch of negatives that they put around AWS ESC, and I'm sure they'll probably do the same thing for Microsoft's Azure Sovereign Cloud as well.
But again, that whole mindset is going to ensure that really doesn't fly. It's almost like, oh, we're going to, it's Little Englander, if I can sort of that old term again. Everybody's very inwardly looking and focused. And in this world, that ain't going to fly.
Well, but that's been sort of the isolationist aspect of it has always been there. This is before this sovereignty. I think this is what this has done, is expose that, and bring it out more to the surface, really. I think that's what we're seeing. But yes, as to whether they can achieve that, and I don't know how you can achieve that, because there's other, even, in T-Systems, we do the open sovereign cloud, which is, open source based. But, there's a lot of kind of how are you going to do that when your processor is from the United States, your chips are from the United States, and your open source projects are from the United States predominantly?
Yeah, and if you take it to the nth degree, and if I use a much more real world and slightly old fashioned analogy, it's the difference between having, the latest, greatest, Toyota, Nissan, Ford, or whatever, or a Trabant.
Yeah.
Because you get to that point where you're so inward looking and you're so short on capital investment, and just ideas that it's it's not workable. I
Yeah.
just find the whole thing
Yeah.
nuts.
Oh, I'm certainly not going to be driving a Renault anytime soon. So there you go.
Excuse me, I do drive a Renault.
I'll leave that to you, Paul. You're already sovereign, as I can see. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, so this whole kind of space is moving fast. We are going to probably spend a bit more time on it, folks. So we'll try and do that. Again, there's a ton of description stuff here, lots of links in the description. So we'll again supply with all those. Let alone things like the AI Gigafactory, AI Industrial Cloud has all been announced by Deutsche Telekom Systems. Sovereign AI, which seems to be a generic term that's coming out. This is very close to what I was advocating for last year, which was what I was calling the MIDS, MIDS, or Model Inference Data Sovereignty. It's actually making sure that your AI model is sovereign. And that's not just for sovereignty's sake, but that's actually just for security's sake. You're just protecting your data and make sure that you're checking the box for for compliance and things like that, especially in regulatory or heavily regulated market sectors as well. So there's a whole bunch of that happening. There is a sovereign AI framework chart available. Make that available, or in the description. Will be in I'll link in the description of the video. It goes by country. It's kind of a little bit subjective, not really sort of a standard. But again, we will try and cover that type of stuff going forward on class setup, maybe some other categories of the or other segments of the channel as well. Okay, so on to Supercloud / other category. Paul's choice. For me, number 5, Supercloud. I just see, because we're kind of doing all this kind of sovereignty stuff, and with doing things like multi-cloud and so on, we'll see a lot more of these tools, which I have been keeping an eye on over the last couple of years, sort of really bubble to the surface a lot more as people kind of do more, hybrid clouds, multi-cloud sort of solutions and so on. So things like Stack Guardian, HPE's Morpheus, Hexaware, Fluid Cloud, TDS, Emma Cloud or Emma.ms, or Emma Cloud as I would call them, sort of appearing in that category, that Supercloud cloud abstraction category that we talked about, Paul. And also may be powered by the likes of Crossplane, Crow, Spacelift, Kyverno, these kind of, CNCF open source projects that are sort of appearing as well. And they're all looking to address, things like Crossplane, for example, addresses multiple Kubernetes clusters. And it doesn't really care where those clusters are. They could be in public cloud. They could be, OpenShifts running in your own data center or whatever. But I think this Supercloud kind of requirement is going to come in a lot more this year, simply because of these things that we're having to do, whether it's sovereignty requirements, whether it's, herding our AI models and AI agents, or whether it's just, hey, look, I'm in multi-cloud. I've been in multi-cloud a number of years, and it's just too taxing to run 2 different types of tool sets. So is there a way for me to combine and address both of these clouds that I'm in using one type of tool set, or ideally one UI? What's your take on that, and whether anything else that you wanted to bring into category 5?
Well, I think very much what you've just mentioned there, which is this idea of making it easier to manage that multi-cloud environment or manage the hybrid cloud environment. I think, if it does that, it's gone a long way down the track. to being a really useful set of tools. I hate the term supercloud. It just sort of, but I don't know what else to call it. So I'm giving up worrying.
Supercloud.
I've given up worrying. It's a bit like, can that's I can't hold back the tide of supercloud. But
Yeah.
I think but the also this idea that it provides that it stops the sort of lock into a particular type of cloud vendor. The argument I always have here is that you just move the lock in somewhere else.
Mm.
As the more and more you abstract away from from the underlying infrastructure, the underlying applications, you just create another level at which you're locked into. But again, I think we've talked for a lot, not just last year, but over the last few years about particularly things like Kubernetes, how transportable are they between the various hyperscalers. And I think if they can get over that one, and they can make life easier to manage, rather, as you say, the multiple, then I think and if we're still having this discussion at the end of 2026, I shall be very disappointed, I think, is because there must be organizations out there screaming to say, give me a way of managing this simply, because at the moment it's not.
Yeah, well, I agree, and that's why I think I don't care what you really call it. It's just a lack of a better term right now. Supercloud. Stack Guardian, I know, have been doing this, and I'm hoping to actually get them on the channel for this. It'll be really cool to see a demo from them. Now, HPE's Morpheus, which they acquired a while back, seems to do something very similar. I saw them at the Gartner IOCS conference last year, and I actually spoke to them, and they scanned my badge and they said, we will be in touch. And I haven't heard from them since. So HPE, I don't know what you guys are doing. Are you spending all that money being at that conference? Are you collecting all that stuff in marketing? Get in touch, because I'd love to see a proper demo of their capabilities and maybe kind of dive deeper into their Morpheus platform. But I think these will come up. They need to come up because they're really important for those reasons. Whether it's that sort of sovereignty requirement, whether it's that AI kind of herding your agents and having some kind of way of being able to provision them once they've been confirmed that they can actually kind of go about and do what they're supposed to be doing for you on your network. Or indeed, just as I said, I'm just, look, guys, I'm in 3 clouds here, and how do I want to like deploy Kubernetes here today because it's cheaper than over there. How do I do that? I don't want to go into the tools of that specific vendor to do it. Or I can, but maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I kind of want to have some kind of a super layer on top to be able to address multiple clouds at the same time and be able to provision stuff as I see fit into whichever cloud I want to at that particular point.
I mean, it should make a huge amount of release a huge amount of value inside organizations, because at the moment they either haven't got the skills or they haven't got the time to do this one properly. And I think if you can get that, it'll be the biggest step they can make in 2026.
Agreed. Okay, so let's move on to category 6, which was cloud security and networking. Now, I picked up a couple of points on here. I'll let you come in, Paul, in a second. The one I kind of really picked up on was around cloud security from Aviatrix. Doug Merritt, I think, from Aviatrix, I'm not sure what his role is there, but there was an article called Embrace the Chaos, and the chaos being CHAIOS, which I quite liked, the way that they kind of weave that into the word. So cloud security in 2026 basically is kind of predictions for 2026 by Doug Merritt. Now, I think there's probably about 3 points that I picked up on there. First point, fragmentation across 4 generations of cloud workloads creates security challenges. Completely agree with that. And we'll maybe dive into what the generations are, but mainly it's kind of virtual machines and containers and functions, on serverless and obviously AI workloads. I think those are the main four. Number two, legacy security approaches are inadequate against modern cloud complexity. Again, yeah, I would agree with that. So things like, CNAP postures and scanning, CNAP posture scanners and repurposed legacy firewalls. I don't think anybody should be doing that. I can't believe actually people would be doing that, but there you go. So that was the second point that was made. And then the third one is the essential solution is a unified security abstraction layer. Here you go, Paul. Security abstraction layer for consistent enforcement. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I'll let you come in on those or maybe some other points that you picked up on.
Yeah, again, that last one is probably key to what's happening here. But it sort of comes back to, I mean, the fact that we've moved so fast, that we've got all these holes now. I mean, it's the only way to describe it, all the holes in the system. And therefore, again, 2026 has got to be a year in which if you add agent orchestration and the whole idea of agentic AI into the piece too. If we haven't found a way of doing that abstraction and saying, I almost see that as a sort of business imperative, not so much a technology imperative. You really need to look at what are my requirements in terms of data security, data integrity, everything. And it's about your own business or your own, government information or whatever it is. It's at that level, because at the moment, everything you've just described is quite technical. And actually, it can be as technical as it likes, and it could be as but if it's not plugging the issues, because actually the organizations that are talking about it haven't got a clear idea of where the threats lie and what the impact is on their businesses or their organizations, we'll be nowhere. So to me, it's almost with yes, okay, we've got the capability to start thinking about it now, but we've got to make that discussion meaningful to the people who run businesses and run organizations, because unless we get them to understand and divvy up the funds, if you like, to do it, and the focus to do it, we're constantly going to be hitting all these issues that we've been seeing, and it'll get worse rather than better.
I agree. And I think the missing piece here for me, again, continues to be networking. There's very little focus on that. You and I have, highlighted this before. Apart from a handful of vendors in this space, it's still very much underrated. And considering some of the outages that we experienced in cloud last year, I don't see, even Aviatrix is not really kind of saying a great deal about that side of it. They seem to kind of shifted their networking capability into more of a sort of a security type of the security aspect of networking, not the predictive or management or flow or anything else in a traffic kind of approach, to networking, and the mapping of networking. Where did this IP packet go? If we talk about sovereignty, and you were talking about data, and you said the whole world's kind of, connected together. Okay, when I press send on this, on this button, I want to know exactly where that packet went to. Can I do that over the internet using my sovereignty and, Aviatrix tools or, somebody else's tools?
And it is incredibly hard to do. I mean, you talk to the guys at Thousand Eyes, part of Cisco.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly difficult thing to do because it's such an ephemeral, it changes so rapidly. We've made it software defined, and therefore when it goes into this sort of pot in the middle, actually tracking it through is nigh on impossible.
The ball of mud
has moved away a little bit. They suddenly realized how difficult that is.
The ball of mud that we mentioned in an earlier episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. All right. I think, so I think, I mean, again, links for the aviatrix stuff is there. I can't remember actually, Paul, if I picked on anything else here. I think there was something else here. There was a kind of a more cybersecurity predictions for 2026 by a guy called Jason Lau. I might actually be covering that in a separate episode or a separate video, actually, that I'm doing with somebody else. But I will include the link in the description for Jason Lau's sort of cybersecurity predictions for 2026. I have to say, again, I'm not a fan of cybersecurity term itself. I'd rather just say, security or cloud security, and then sort of networking or cloud networking or cloud network management, or, as I like to call it. That's kind of a better term for it. But yeah, I'll include all of that for you guys in the description of the video. Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. Okay, so our next category, Paul, is open source software and cloud native. Now, I didn't actually pick up a great deal in this category, believe it or not, but there were some predictions that people were making, and we'll maybe kind of come in with our own projections after we go through. So ZDNet had a Linux Unstoppable in 2026 sort of list of predictions. And then immediately afterwards, Linux Insider said, open source in 2026 faces a defining moment. So you couldn't get any more juxtaposition and difference in those two. And then again, there was some more stuff, I think, from another one, which I think it was actually more ZDNet stuff, but that was kind of more around sort of, Linux growth and UIs and, Firefox kind of facing severe decline, which is kind of more the client side, not that interesting. Did you gather anything else in this category?
Not really. I mean, the one that was surprising for me was even the thought that anybody has to say that Linux is unstoppable. I mean, it's surely now the de facto environment for pretty much everything cloud.
Yeah.
So it was a strange one, but yes, the only thing I sort of drew the line at was this, and until I sort of read it in more detail, was this sort of Linux growth in the desktop. And of course it's growth in the desktop for developers really, and sort of, technical people. It's not, you and I have had one or two conversations in the last few months that says, Windows isn't going anywhere for the average user, or even the average enterprise user. It's not just, those of us at home, it's the average enterprise user. And, it will be the dominant force in desktops and laptops for some time to come. But there was this sort of, secondary line that said, oh, it's for, for developers and sort of technical staff. Yeah, okay, I get that. I don't know what your take on that is. I can't say I've got a comment, but I wouldn't have thought Linux is going to be a big challenger to Microsoft in the client side. I really can't.
Yeah, I think what's happened most recently, and this is literally the last few months of sort of 2025 and now into 2026, is there has been a little bit of a backlash on the latest version of Windows 11, where advertising and we want to siphon all your data off. Oh, so you forgot to switch off that option? Sorry, that's all your data gone, type of thing. Oh, we did a, second half 2025 update and forgot, we switched everything, all the telemetry back on again without telling you, type of stuff. I think there's been a bit of a backlash around that. I don't really think it's as big as people are making it out to be. And you're right, it's that sort of potentially that category of, enthusiasts, technical, people in IT basically who kind of, can go through the steps and do an update or do a dual boot or something like that. And don't forget that switching to Linux doesn't mean they've got rid of Windows. It could be a dual boot, and nobody's taking stats on that. So anybody who's actually going to go at Windows, do give me some statistics if you know them about dual boot, because that's really interesting. But there has been, and don't get me wrong, I mean, there's some really good Linux distributions now, which will overcome most, not all, but most of that kind of, oops, there's no device driver for what you're trying to do. Or you're trying to play an MP3 file, sorry, you're going to have to download and unpack this thing, and it's a third party, whatever, and compile your own, that kind of thing. That sort of stuff, I think, has mostly gone away. But there are certain corners, I think, of the, of the apps world where that still exists, and you still have to kind of, manually knit everything yourself for it.
I suppose the big question from my point of view, and looking at, and this could have an impact, moving forward, is how far it makes the, if you like, the user journey simpler to have it Linux end to end, as opposed to having a Windows interface. It does it. I'm not sure it does. I'm just positing that as a potential. Because if it suddenly becomes the sort of de facto way in which AI in particular, but the user interface changes and the underlying operating environment for that is Linux rather than Windows. Now that could be a significant change, and one of the things that they're looking at is, this idea that with AI now, your interface might be not so much moving from keyboard to touch screen, but from keyboard to touch screen to voice. And does that require, will that enable a completely different client device operating environment that's probably Linux? I don't know, interesting one, but I don't see that happening in 2020. If we're doing 2026 predictions, I think that's a long way out yet.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a lot of threads, and maybe we should just do like a separate chat in regards to that, because that's just, I think, perennial and sort of quite relevant anyway. But for I guess for millennials, it's, they've grown up with Windows and Macs at work, right? So if we stick to the client side, let's stick to the client side and the sort of the OS side for a minute, and then we'll go maybe a little bit on the enterprise side of things. But just on that client side and OS side, the millennials are kind of used to, Windows. That's might be the corporate standard, invariably, and maybe a little bit of Mac OS thrown in for good measure. The kind of the Shoreditch crowd and people like that. So that kind of space is really used to those. They're not really used to Linux. Now, yes, there are pockets of, this health company, this branch of government in Norway or somewhere, went fully LibreOffice and Linux and whatever, and dropped all the Microsoft stuff because they had a tiff with Microsoft or the US government or something. Yeah, sure, there's a pockets of that, but I think the majority, and the underestimated majority, is really the enterprise. And you're not going to waltz into Deutsche Telekom or Deutsche Bank or HSBC or any of those guys and say, yeah, we're replacing your 11,000 Windows 11 machines with LibreOffice. You might get lucky that it will open your docx document properly with no formatting problems, and all the fonts will work as well, guaranteed, or might do, or may not do. It's just an impossible scenario. I don't see that. So even if the consumer was, convinced with Linux Mint or Ubuntu or something like that, and like I said, those are fairly decent distributions. I've got no problems with those. But just that, I think, last bastion is going to be the enterprise. And Microsoft will continue to develop Windows simply because, the enterprise says, I need Windows 12 now, please, or whatever you're going to release next, because they're the ones who are actually kind of driving a lot of the change, the updates, and things like that. Now, if Microsoft does cheese them off with advertising and things like that, sure, there is ways for them to switch that off with group policy and whatever. The Windows admins can do that relatively easily, because everybody in corporate tends to build their own Windows image anyway. They don't just go and get the one off the shelf from a PC shop or something. So but if they do take that too far with the corporates, then that backlash, I think Microsoft will certainly pay attention to, if not the consumer backlash. I think that's happening in that. But like I said, having said that, millennials are kind of used to Windows and Mac, and now the Gen Zs of the world, what do they use? They use iPhones, they use Android, things like that. So even they would not necessarily look at Linux to switch to. They'd probably want to say, well, can I just not run it all on my phone or my Android tablet or something, right? And they would kind of want to, bring their own device type of thing, and and work that way.
Yeah, but it's back to it's back to developers and programmers, all those sort of areas, because most other people see their apps. I mean, if you're working on an iPhone or an Android, and just using an Outlook or something, it looks the same on all of them. Or you're using any of the sort of apps you get from from the Android store, from the Apple store. Actually, when you're using them, they're no different. The user interface is the same. So it's only people who are interested in some form of programming development, or of the desktop environment, who maybe think, well, there's a different way of doing this. I think the average user is going to want to see his or her apps appear in exactly the same format, whatever the underlying application or whatever the underlying operating system is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, my sort of projection is this, that Microsoft may lose a few more of those technical, users of Windows 11, and then I don't know. I know that they've done a lot of backtracking in the past, like Windows 8 and and so on in the past. So I don't really see that being a problem for them. I think it just might be. It will just get to a head with with the enterprise customers perhaps. And certainly, I think the Windows 8 backlash was a lot of enterprises at the time, not just users saying, "Where's my start button?" But there was also the enterprises saying, "Yeah, actually, we do need that start button. Thank you very much." And then Microsoft, kind of said, "Oh, yeah, okay, we'll bring it back. Whatever the next version was." So, yeah. So I'm not really. I think it has probably lost a bit of percentage just due to these kind of recent bumps, but not. I don't think that the predominant kind of share and percentage is still with Windows, definitely, and will continue to be. The one I think that I find absurd is and I think I've mentioned this before, is the fact that a lot of these kind of open source people advocate for open source and Linux and whatever, yet you see them walking around with Apple, Apple Macs under their arms. And if the irony there is just unbelievable. The hypocrisy, I think, there is really unbelievable, because Apple is the most closed ecosystem and walled garden that you can get into. Yeah, here's all these Ubuntu users. Oh, I'm running Ubuntu on a Mac. Why? Why don't you just run it on an x86 machine or a Chromebook? Chrome OS, right? If you're kind of into that sort of stuff, then that's what you should be using, surely.
But you can't get over the fact that most people, when it comes to what they use in their own sort of personal world, is still down to the image it portrays of themselves.
Yeah, do as I say, don't do as I do, kind of.
Yeah, why do white van men have Mercedes vans as opposed to Ford Transit vans?
Yeah, Ford Transit vans. Yeah, exactly.
It's the same. It's the same issue. God bless the consumer marketing environment.
Exactly. Now, on to the more enterprise side, and a bigger fish to fry for open source is this licensing problem, right? So we've seen a lot of this over the last sort of 2-3 years, where open source vendors have changed their licenses to the Bustle license, the BSL license, to various other ones. I have covered this, guys, in the past as well, so do check out some of the other previous videos. If I do dig up the links, I will include them in the description of the video for you as well. But yeah, there has been obviously that. And I think that is a bigger fish to fry they need to be focusing on for 2026 and beyond, because I saw very little focus on that. I mean, it might be a kind of a swan over the kind of, or duck over water kind of thing, where the swan is kind of paddling crazy under the water and you can't see stuff that's happening. But I've seen very little in the public kind of in discussion in regards to that. Certainly at things like CNCF events like KubeCon and so on.
I mean, the question I had when I was looking at this was, because it's gone mainstream, because enterprises are using it heavily, because there's all the pressure on, staff resource and all those sort of things, the idea that you're going to have to, potentially maintain your own, version of Linux or whatever, the fact that you want enterprise level maintenance and support and upgrades and all those sort of issues just screams at you. You need to find a slightly different, licensing model to enable you to do that. And it obviously grates, if you like, on the sort of idea of open source of being sort of, completely, free to use. But then you think, well, how do we maintain this?
Yes.
And that's the issue, really. And with it going mainstream, with it becoming, the way in which enterprises run their mission critical systems, based on what is underlying, an open source environment, albeit, whether it's Red Hat or it's one of the other ones, lots of different ways in which you have to pay for support. That pressure is just going to keep on growing. And I think it's, from a projection point of view, if some of the, open source companies haven't got themselves into that sort of, all right, we need to change the licenses thing, I think they will in 2026.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, like I said, that is a bigger fish to fry than, other things. And just one last point on that kind of, conversion to Linux on the desktop side. I mean, that might be easy, like I said, for certain organizations or enterprises, but not everybody can achieve that. And I mean, the headache and the cost of that is just gigantic. But having, like I said, looked at the ZDNet Linux Unstoppable in 2026 predictions, just to have a quick look at that. So it says Linux desktop growth accelerates. Okay, yeah, we said that. Targeting X Windows users, and we spoke about that. AI influences development workflows. AI tools will increasingly assist in Linux kernel and open source development. So what does that mean? You're going to be vibe coding the Linux kernel going forward? We'll see.
Good luck with that one.
Yeah, good luck with that one. Security improvements deepen, so open source security, including kernel hardening and supply chain defenses, will be a major focus. I mean, supply chain, definitely, I see. Rust expands its Linux projects. So Rust's use in parts of the Linux ecosystem will grow. I think it's actually already, I'm not an expert on this, I think it's actually already being used in the Linux kernel. So a lot of development is being done in Rust and coexisting with C language. Immutable and secure distributions gain traction. Any idea what's an immutable distribution, Paul?
Well, one that doesn't change, but apart from that, I'm not sure I could tell you exactly what that entails. But
yeah,
while everything's changing around you in terms of software and businesses are changing, the idea that the underlying environment is immutable, i.e., never changes. So I suppose you have a solid base on which to put your applications, your operating system, and all those sort of things. That's my assumption, but I haven't studied it enough, because we've been so looking at the mutability of the world around us at the moment that having somebody come up and say, you've got an immutable infrastructure, well, I'd have to unpack that, because at the moment, you need mutable infrastructure, because it's going to, what you're doing today with infrastructure is going to change tomorrow. And how does that impact your costs, your capital versus operating costs, all those sort of things, that says I need to be much more flexible with my underlying infrastructure, which seems to go against that.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 points I think that they're making here. So immutable and atomic updates model. So immutable is focusing a lot more on the Linux kernel being read-only. So actually, you can't mess around with the Linux kernel.
Okay.
Now, does that mean the Linux kernel or just Linux kernel? Because you could potentially kind of create a two-tier type thing. We're used to two-tier stuff in the UK. You could be creating a two-tier kind of approach here to the kernel. So where there's really read-only, and that's kind of the core kernel, if you want to call it that. And then there's like an outer kernel where you can mess around with that and whatever. And then there's the actual Linux distribution wrapped around that as well. So that could happen. But they're just talking here, just to clarify, immutable Linux is where the kernel is essentially read-only. Now, atomic updates is even smaller updates than like a patch or a security fix or an update or whatever you would call them. It's like literally like very little kind of types of updates, very small updates.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but the sense I've got, and this is going back in sort of into the history of technology and computer updates and all those sort of things, is that if you don't have, if you don't have a firm interface between those, you talked about if you like, the kernel, the real kernel, and then the outer layer. Yeah, okay, that works. But that interface, whatever you call that interface and how you manage it, has to be consistent. Because the minute you mess around with that, you do affect the kernel. You can't.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's the same issue that, like I said, Microsoft had with Windows 10 or whatever it was back in the day, when they didn't want to give CrowdStrike and people like that. In fact, it was the generation before that. It was the McAfees and Nortons of the world. They didn't want to give those guys access to the kernel. They said, we're just going to keep the kernel closed to everybody. Everybody just starts their service when the app services start, basically. Sure, you can be kind of priority maybe, and you get to start first and, scan the memory and scan whatever you need to the hard disk, boot sectors and whatever, if you're antivirus and so on. But we're not going to give you. And then the EU, apparently, as I dug up, little known information, said, no, that's a monopoly. You can't do that. So you have to open up the kernel. So that's kind of been this is back from those sort of, the days of where Microsoft wasn't kind of in trouble with the monopolies and what have you. Since then, they've allowed people like, these antivirus vendors to install their stuff in the kernel. And that's why you had CrowdStrike, putting in their little part of the code and disguising itself as a device driver, basically. And that's kind of been the updating module. And that's what caused the outage, the recent outage. So
I think, and as we come back that one, I know we spoke about that, but it's sort of right. It makes the point that if you allow people to come into whatever kernel, whatever operating environment, and change it, then things like security clearly, but just application updates. How the hell if I'm relying on a certain set of APIs or a certain set of the way the kernel works, and you've just changed it, my God, the chaos it causes for the application developer.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on, guys, get real. I mean, and you go back, IBM were not good at keeping their operating system interface stable. They allowed all, usually their own engineers, to go down and tweak it. So you had multiple different versions of the IBM operating environment, which for the application teams was an absolute nightmare. I mean, you probably go back to your days in IBM.
I'm under NDA. I can't speak about that. After 20 years.
It's just, well, between you, me, and the camera, it's all
the camera.
right.
Yeah,
You tell
exactly,
me.
man. Don't worry about it.
It's all right.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So, and then the last point that they made was some legacy projects face decline. I wish they do, because they just keep coming back. People keep going back to OpenStack and stuff like that. Check out, by the way, guys, my Dead Tech series if you want to have a look at that. If you're watching this much later, there's probably a playlist on the channel. But these kind of insane, sort of projects just keep coming back over and over again. People just keep reviving them, and then there's an excuse. They go, "Oh yeah, we'll just go back to that project again." I'm going, but we moved on from a cloud operating system. That was the whole point of orchestration and public cloud and cloud native, and they just keep bringing them back and reviving them. But I wish they would die off. Yeah.
There is no more certainty in this world than if you say you're going to stop doing something, close it down, decommission it or whatever, that suddenly all the people who love that environment appear out of nowhere and go, "Oh, you can't do that.
You can't do that.
You can't do that." It's absolutely, and that's immutable. That never changes.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, so Linux Insider had a slightly more pessimistic view. It says Linux faces a defining moment in 2026. So open source becomes core enterprise infrastructure. Well, it's kind of been that really for a while, and it's been foundational across the enterprise. Cloud and AI, yes, I agree a lot more kind of in that space than anything else. Enterprise demand for governed open source environments rises. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's kind of a little bit more around. Says business will prioritize open source platforms with strong governance, auditability, and integration controls. So this is kind of the more recent sort of sovereignty requirements and supply chain guarantee and stuff like that, I guess. I mean, I don't know how you're going to do that. That's quite vague. How you're going to do the governance, of that. But anyway, funding pressure stresses open source sustainability. Yes, we know that because we've already said that a lot of them are changing to, things like the Bustle license, for example. So we're very much aware of that. And I guess that, I can project that will continue for this year. I think you'll see a lot more upset. You might even see couple of big name projects going that way, and that will really upset people, I think, for this year. It's going to have that community up in arms, which is good. So just to keep stirring the pot a little bit. AI native and agent ready databases gain importance. I think databases have never been kind of attractive in that way. They do a job, they're back-end kind of stuff, they just get on with it. If they change to AI native and they become agent ready, all for them, but they're still going to be in the background. Nobody's going to say, wow, I lead with my vector database.
Yeah, it's scaffolding. It's what we call scaffolding.
It's PaaS, right? Yeah, it's scaffolding. Yeah. Exactly. I do agree it will come on, but not because people have gone, oh my God, I need what's it called, that other database type? I can't remember. It's just, but I need 10 vector databases, for my AI project, or something else, related to that. I don't know. I mean, but yeah, the scaffold. You're right. Security of agentic systems now it will become priority. This is true because you and I think, have spoken before, and I've talked to you in our correspondence about an AI agent registry. Now, some people have mentioned similar type of stuff. Hey, we need to, we can't just leave these agents running around on our network doing their own thing. They have to be kind of registered, and have to give them permissions, and this is beyond telling the agent what to do, what the agent's job is supposed to do. This is its permission.
It's giving them their credentials. It's the
Exactly.
policy
Exactly.
management you've been talking about.
Exactly.
And without that, then businesses will be at risk if they allow that to happen without that.
Exactly. Graph database. That's what I was trying to
Right.
remember earlier. But yeah, I mean, I agree on the agents. I think that definitely should happen. And the sooner that happens, the better. Having said that, as we've said again in our correspondence, AI agents for 2026 are going to be augmenting existing applications. That's my projection for the year. You're not going to have like 100 agents running around your network and going, "Oh, hello, agent, how are you?" and meeting each other on the. They're not going to do that. Nobody's going to let anybody loose on their network like that, even if it's in-house developed and and trained and blah blah blah. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be just like how we started with AI, Gen AI, over the last few years. Everybody just added that capability to their existing platforms. So if you're using Salesforce, now you've got Gen AI with it. If you're using Workday, now you've got Gen AI with it. That's how it's going to be, I think, for AI agents as well. It's going to be your apps with AI agent capability augmenting what you already have.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to start, fairly simply because we've got to learn as a race, I think, as people, to how to prompt these damn things to do the job. So you're going to start with fairly simple processes.
Yeah.
That can, because this stuff is not deterministic. If you've got a process that requires a single outcome every time the same way, you're going to have to put an awful lot of guardrails in to make sure that
exactly
it doesn't deliver you. The agent using Gen AI doesn't deliver you something that is completely wrong and puts the whole company into a difficult position.
Yeah,
it's a really good, and it's a series of podcasts that The Economist has been doing, but the first podcast they did was with the CEO of Sierra, who's also, I think, the chairman, non-exec chairman of OpenAI. So he's got a foot in both the Agentic AI camp,
right,
the Sierra piece, but also, and it's a worthwhile listen. I must admit, it's about 40 minutes. It's a really worthwhile listen, a very sensible approach to, the way he's seeing his customers start to use AI agents. And it is that simple approach that you and I have discussed. And if you get it he says the rest will come, but at the moment, the danger is you run faster than you can, you start to try and run too fast.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the first of those guardrails should be that AI agents registry. I think that's where we need to really start with that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then it says, what else is here? So open source architectures expand in business applications. I guess we talked about Ball of Mud recently, right? And again, that's kind of maybe what that's referring to, that type of thing. And then ongoing licensing and openness debates continue. Well, we've just said that, right? So again, nothing new there. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm kind of okay with most of those. I don't agree with necessarily everything there, especially kind of around the Windows versus Linux thing. I think Microsoft will come to its senses at some point, just like they did with all their previous debacles of Windows 8 and what have you as well.
Yeah, I just think we're moving to an era where the term open source will be a little sort of meaningless in one sense. Because, yes, it's a bit like, because really where it's going to is a sort of what you're seeing in some of the sort of Gen AI models at the moment for end users is, there's a certain amount to use that's free, but if you want this facility or that facility, you're going to have to start paying for it.
Yeah, it's the open core or something, I think.
Yeah,
it
is. So yes, I mean, we probably won't change the term open source, but it's actually a very different looking beast than it was, 10, 15 years ago. Very different.
It's getting diluted, I think is the word I would want to use. I think where Linux is. And it was interesting, I think the Linux, not the foundation, but the committee or the community or whatever, recently agreed on a succession to Linus Torvalds. So if Linus, gets hit by a bus tomorrow or or decides to retire from kernel development, there's like a succession process in terms of what do they do, going forward. So that was quite interesting. But anyway, that's beside the point. But yeah, I agree, it's kind of getting diluted. Let's move on to cloud economics. That's our 8th category, Paul. Now, I picked on a couple of reports here, one from Tango, that's Tangoe. So they actually seem to do a lot of different services. And the other one was Manage Engine, which is a little bit more around, cloud cost management with their cloud spend, I think it's called, their platform. So looking at Tango's predictions for the year, let's see if we actually agree on any of these as kind of being projections for us. Cost management becomes critical. Yeah, I guess that's definitely the case. Mobile threat defense adoption accelerates. I guess so. Mobility stack fragmentation will shrink. So this is organizations will consolidate and optimize existing mobile systems instead of adding new tools. I guess to a degree. I mean, again, this is kind of more on the client side, but I do agree with that. Interesting one, 4th one here. FinOps drives cloud financial control and innovation. I will have to disagree with that because I think FinOps is not really focusing on the right stuff. Certainly what I've seen from the FinOps Foundation and FinOps.org and what they do. I attended a Flexera event last year, and sure, it was all kind of driven towards Flexera solutions, but they were talking about embracing ISAM and ITAM and SAM and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, why those? I mean, I don't understand that. Is my advocacy is around cloud cost management tools like OpenCost and what IBM acquired in 24 KubeCost, and also things like continuous profiling. So like what Polar Signals do in that space, and others do as well around the sort of the APM side, so Turbonomic and AppDynamics and so on. And I think those are directly or indirectly ways where you can save costs, in your apps, in your clouds, and your resources that you're using up in the cloud. So why isn't the FinOps Foundation recognizing that and saying, yes, we want to work with those types of tools, not just the top-end Apptio and Flexera, type tools where it's kind of an umbrella tool. Yeah, why not the critical down in the trenches tools like your cloud cost management and your continuous profiling type tools as well?
Yeah, I know we've had one or two conversations, both sort of on mail, but also speaking to each other about FinOps and what we've seen. And I think I said earlier in the year, I mean, having seen, I think it was it a Google presentation where they came out and were so pleased with themselves about how they'd applied, FinOps in their area. And to me, it was, straightforward cost accounting, management accounting. Why are you creating something trying to create something completely new for something that management ought to be doing anyway?
Anyway, yes. And it should be part of that policy, right?
And then the other discussion that you and I had about this, the IT director says yes, the financial director says no.
Yes.
Is getting the financial director or getting the whole organization to understand what benefits they've had out of the cloud, the money they're spending on cloud. This goes back, this is frustrating because it goes back quite a long way to, discussions I had at a dinner round table with a guy from one of the big European banks. He was having that sort of, finance says no, because it's costing too much money with your cloud spend. And he's saying, yeah, but if I stop doing that, they won't get the analysis they need to drive their investment business. It just seems to be everybody's working in a silo again. For goodness sake, it's about what does cloud enable you to do that you couldn't do before? Okay, now look at the cost, but what are the benefits that come out of it? And I just still don't see that.
Yeah.
Drives you nuts.
I know. Yeah. Okay. So we just said FinOps drives cloud financial control innovation. We disagreed with that. Ironically, the next point, number 5, says AI spend forces expanded FinOps scope. we were just saying about that, right? It does need to look at cloud cost management and and continuous and things like continuous profiling, right? So that makes a bit of a contradiction, but there you go. And then you've got things like Kubernetes cost optimization emerges as a major saving opportunity. Yeah, we just said that. Kube cost, open cost, that's the kind of thing that you want to do. There's a little bit about telco here, so I'll skip that. And that's kind of pretty much what I got from the Tango one. And then you've got the Manage Engine, which is their top 10 cost management predictions 2026. AI native FinOps becomes the new normal. No, it won't. It's gonna have some time to go, I think, in order to do that. What will probably happen is you will see a kind of a AI, as we had like with AI ops adopting Gen AI. So you'll have a Gen AI ops, as I'm calling it. And you'll have something similar applied to FinOps, but it won't be necessarily, it won't necessarily be native. It's not going to be like integrated with it. And then it's got an agent and, oh, that's costing you too much. Okay, I'll go and sort that out for you, that Kubernetes cluster. I don't think it's going to do that. I don't see that in 2026, maybe 27 and beyond, but not in 26.
It's like a lot of the SaaS discussions we've been having, it's about augmenting and enhancing the ability of people to get to grips with all the data and all the sort of decision points that are coming out. I think it's to help with those decision points and where do I need to do things. I agree with you. It won't be the next phase.
No, I don't see that. Number 2 was, it said real-time granular cost intelligence across architectures. So organizations demand instantaneous fine-grained visibility into cloud spend by service, team, and workload. Yeah, and this is what we're saying. Cloud cost management, continuous profiling, APM, application performance monitoring. That's exactly what we're saying they should be doing, because it's no longer, like I said, enough to be doing that from an umbrella tool. It cannot be like an umbrella tool that's doing that. You have to get into the fine-grained details in order to make the savings, not when you've received your bill and then you go, drat, okay, so for next month we can't afford this bill, so we're going to have to turn off some service. No, it has to kind of be at the grassroots. You have to start in the trenches and kind of go up in that way.
So, it is about bringing in, whether you call them sort of super dashboards or whatever, but or whether it is proper Gen AI going, right, well, I've looked at all those individual tools and this is what I think you should be doing. Now what do you want to do? Or, could it go as far as automating it? Probably in the future, but not yet. That's the usual thing.
And the third point actually clarifies a little bit. It says shift left of cost controls to move to earlier, to move them to earlier into the pipeline. Yes, and I think that's where the policy stuff will come in. So, like I said, your Kyverno policy agent, whatever it is, you as a developer try to start something, it's built into your platform engineering IDP, right? So you as a developer go and select that from your portal, and the portal says, sorry, you've already launched 5 instances this month. You have to shut down one of those before I can allow you to launch this, yet another instance, right? Because the policy says per developer, you don't need more than 5.
And there ought to be, because I can see all sorts of people trying to get workarounds around that, but there ought to be some simple mechanism then for saying, if you now want 6 rather than 5, here's the route to actually getting that justified. And if you really do still want it, then click this button to justify it. Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah. And then there's automated, Slack escalation or whatever it is, and ends up with the platform team, and the platform team says yay or nay, to that. But I think the problem with these, Paul, is not that we can't do them. The problem with it is the automation of these things, the actual knitting of all these things together to do it. And it's not so it can move beyond the ClickOps kind of stage.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
That's where the problem is. And nobody's doing anything with that. They're giving you a platform like, platform engineer, like Backstage from CNCF. It's a platform engineering, solution. It creates your IDP and it gives you a portal and blah, blah, blah. It all looks great, but it's all ClickOps. And then if you want to do that kind of stuff and put it, stitch it together with Kyverna for like a policy management engine, good luck with that.
Yeah, not wanting to manage engine, but as a relatively small, software vendor, if I can call them that, internal tool vendor, they will struggle to get, they'll struggle to do the automation piece, because actually you've got to get the enterprises to get their workflows right and their processes right before you can automate them.
Yes.
So, there's opportunities elsewhere that a manage engine would find exceedingly difficult to organize. So they're going to do the clickbait and hope, maybe I ought to go and talk to them and say, let me give you some advice around how do you build a part, how you partner with them. Maybe you go and show the big 5 consultancies that you've got the best way of doing this, and they can get some really good revenues by helping firms optimize and
exactly
their workflows.
Agreed. Okay, so there says automated optimization becomes standard. So
we're talking about that. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Just saying about now, multi-cloud cost governance. Although again, like I said, I don't see that happening, to be honest with you. I don't see it in 26, but we'll see. Multi-cloud cost governance gets more rigorous. Yes, because I think you need to, if you are in multi-cloud, that does need to happen. Sustainability and green ops shape cloud decisions. No, they won't. Certainly not in 2026. Not with Gen AI around the corner and everybody wanting to do inference. Sustainability and green ops has been put on the back burner, and will be for well into 2030. I think is my projection, and you can take that as a multi-year projection from me, definitely, from what I'm seeing. Okay, so managed service provider adoption of multi-tenant cost platforms accelerates. Okay, it's a bit of a mouthful. No comment on that. Automation of reservations and savings plans. Yes, but people are already doing this anyway. Either through tools or through consulting or scripted stuff. I know. One guy that's been on the channel with me, Christian. He does this for his AWS customers. He gives them the advice, he runs the tools and makes it all bespoke and specific to what they need, and that's what he essentially does. That's how he earns his living, and that is an essential part, I think, of how we go forward, especially with the previous point of multi-cloud, right? I think that makes sense to me. Okay, what else we got here? Security and cost optimization merge. I don't know how. So it says cost data patterns are used to identify security misconfigurations and anomalous activity alongside financial insights. It's not a merger, it's one helping the other. Kind of thing, right? Would you not say, Paul?
Oh, absolutely. When I looked at it and read it, my first thought was, no, they're not merging. And in fact, if you merge them, you could blur it for either side. They've got to be separate.
It's another DevOps.
Yeah. Don't go there.
It's what would you call that? As secosts? I don't know. Just having some fun with the name. Okay. And then forecasting and budgeting become continuous. Isn't that what you're supposed to do anyway? I
Yeah.
just some of these are a little bit
Well,
laughable, but anyway.
yeah, I mean, I suppose it's interesting again when you get people who are coming at this from quite different environments,
Yeah.
and Manage Engine, if you sort of look at their history and where they've come from, they're looking at places where forecasting and the sort of companies that they've dealt with tend to be those that do, they'll forecast occasionally and they'll budget once a year.
Mm,
They'll
mm.
budget once a year. And that's where the life everybody's come from. And a lot of companies are still in that mode. Enterprises, small enterprises,
Yeah.
not so much from forecasting, but budgeting. Budgets are only done once a year,
Yes.
if
Yeah.
you're lucky.
How would you do that? I mean, you can't unless you take a drastic action, you can't really sort of just decide, oh, we've come up against this in June, so let's change the. I mean, you can do it for the next year, whatever your next fiscal is, right?
Yeah.
But you can't kind of change those things halfway through the year or
Well,
arbitrarily make those changes, right?
you can't arbitrarily make the changes to one budget because it will have an impact on all the others. They're all linked.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you're going to take money or add costs to one area, you've got to look at short-term revenue gain. It's not a simple process.
I agree. Okay, let's move on to number 9, category 9, which is cloud data management, storage, data fabric, etc. So all about cloud data, really. The only thing I had in here was a predictions from the CEO of Snowflake. This was an AI predictions 2026. It's not direct. Actually, somebody reposted it on LinkedIn. So hopefully it's accurate and it's not distorted anything. But there was like a top 7 points that I picked up on that. I'm not going to necessarily go through all of that, just in the interest of time. As we said, guys, all of this stuff, all the links will be available. I do run out of space sometimes in the description of the video, so do check out any pinned comments I might have as well, and that's where I kind of add all my extra stuff. But yeah, let's pick on a few. What piqued your interest in these, Paul? Anything that you like, or anything else that you've picked up on? Any other predictions in cloud data?
Big tech's, the first one, big tech's grip loosening. The great decentralization is coming. Yes, probably, possibly. But, let's face it. I don't think data's reached that point where so many companies are focused on it.
Oh.
And how do you break in and how do you change the sort of data models we've already got, and the fact that it's always been almost outside the cloud development arena. The whole cloud piece has been outside there because it's stateful compared to everybody else thinking stateless, and those things have meant that the big companies have maintained pretty much of a grip. And I don't see that changing in 2026. It might do in the longer term, but I don't see that changing there.
What else you got?
I mean, a lot of it was, I love this term, continuous learning defines winners. Well, yes, it does in every market. If you're constantly learning and constantly, keeping ahead of
a bit sales 101, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Execution gets commoditized. Well, yeah, you could get to a point, I suppose, where totally commoditized in the sense that AI takes over doing all the work. But I didn't find it, particularly. It didn't give me any new insights on where data was going. That was the challenge I had. I was thinking, is there anything in there that says, "Oh, haven't thought about that"? And it's almost like they forgot about data. AI moves beyond chatbots. Yeah, wow.
I think people have to, when they're doing these things, they have to step out of their own sort of head in terms of where they are and what they do, and still talk about the same thing, but from somebody who's not who's not doing this day in, day out.
Yeah.
And then I think the terminology and the explanation and the wording will then make a lot more sense to people like you and me who are not in the data space. The one I picked up on is said, shadow AI drives adoption. Unapproved use of consumer AI tools remains the fastest path to enterprise AI uptake, outpacing formal IT programs.
But it really isn't about data, is it? I mean, this is not about data.
That's not data, that's indirectly, I think. Yes.
I mean, yes, data underpins everything that AI is doing, but actually, there's a bigger. And we talk about data fabrics. There's
Yes.
nothing here about data fabric.
No, it's not going to say. It's not saying anything like data fabric will replace XYZ or will become the de facto approach, or more adoption of data fabric or data mesh, or
data mesh or data fabric, or the whole idea of not being, under, if you like, acceptance that you've got multiple different types of database, whether it's vector, whether it's graph, or whether it's time series, or whether it's traditional relational databases, or whatever, but not recreating another data lake or another data warehouse. How do you do that with fabric and mesh and streaming?
Good question. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the only bit, there was an extra bonus sort of thing at the end. It said 2026, in 2026, advantage comes from data context, governance, accuracy, and organizational readiness. I mean, yes, so data context is in, if you're kind of going to be using that, whether it's in an AI situation or not, context is important for that, and certainly it is for AI. Governance of the data, yes. Accuracy or veracity, yes. But this is the 3 V's, 4 V's, whatever it is that we've talked about, and whatever, right? The 5 V's or whatever it is of.
But that's not a change from 2025 or 2024 or 2023.
No, that's a constant.
Or 1983, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a constant, right?
It's a constant.
It's almost a cosmological constant, that one.
Yeah.
You can't get away from it. So the ones I wanted to bring in was, I want to see more clarity around how enterprises can manage their data, which is what we were just saying. Is it a data mesh? Do I get rid of my lakes and lake houses and whatever I've got, and go to like a data mesh when it comes to kind of the modern way forward. I mean, when data warehouse came in, right, and however many decades it was ago, people said, yeah, that thing over there, that warehouse, that's the future way of doing things. So you had something to point to. You had somewhere to go. You could put it in your roadmap. You could say, okay, yeah, we are an MS on our data here. Warehouse looks like a good way to do it. Let's try and aim for that. For better or worse, that's kind of what people had. They had a concept, they had an idea, and they had an aim, something to aim for. But just kind of throwing out data mesh, and then you need a vector database, and you need all these other, and graph databases and blah, blah, and it's just like, okay, yeah, but when am I going to use this? How am I going to manage everything? What's the governance around these? What do I do for DR? And backup and recovery and DR for this type of.
I think you've just hit on something there, which is that there's got to be much more of a linkage between, I don't know whether you call it a use case or an application area or whatever, and what the data strategy is around that and the data processes you use.
Exactly.
Because a data warehouse might be absolutely the right thing to have for an environment that doesn't rapidly change.
Yeah.
But if you've got AI agents out there all on the fly doing, making decisions, you want to make sure that they've got the latest data, and all those issues, and it's validated, verified, and clean, and everything that you want it to be, so that they don't drop you in it. Basically.
Yes. Exactly. So that would be one thing for me. And I don't know. I just don't see clarity in that. I see more options, and that can be a good thing, but it can also be confusing for people. And I would not necessarily go and say, yes, a data lake house is the way to go forward right now, especially with AI being so unsettled and dynamic.
Yeah,
exactly, right. I wouldn't be, as a CIO or CTO for a ABC company somewhere out there, I would not do that. I'd just say carry on as what we've got, improve what we've got, and make it secure and sovereign, and kind of stick to that. And then the other one is really more around AI models, but affecting your data. So are we now at the point where are the models trained enough and understand enough where I can say to the models, here's my metadata, here's my schema, right? And my database is over there. Go and sort it out. Go and get me this information that I need from my database without me having to SQL it all and and script it and go into the database's interface or the warehouse's interface or the whatever I've got, whatever platform I've got. Are we there? Are we there with that? Can models do that? Because for me, augment AI in augmenting applications, as we said, Salesforce and Workday, fine. Agents the same way. They're augmenting. They're within an existing platform, and they'll run in again in Salesforce and Workday and what have you. Fine, okay, that's fine. That's AI within something, right? Not AI outside, like we said, running around, agents running around, which we talked about, having a registry for those and things like that. But just an AI, like a Copilot, like Microsoft Copilot, where it just runs in my data, in my business environment, let's call it. And then I can query it about files. I can query it about our policies. I can query it about data that might be sitting in certain databases, all of course within security and it's all secured. And I can't necessarily just go to my HR database and ask it how much does my CEO earn, what's his or her salary or something like that. So, but can I do that now? Am I able to do that? That would be a really good thing for this guy to answer.
Yeah, I think so. And what we'd like to see, I mean, these small language models that are almost vertically oriented, or even specific to individual businesses. To do exactly what you just said. I think the answer is it capable of being done? Yes. Now, and you and I can debate and argue, where is that training and inferencing going to be done? But yes, it ought to be able to be possible to do that now.
Yeah. So is Snowflake doing? I mean, this is a question for Snowflake. If Snowflake is watching, is Snowflake able to do that right now? Is DataOps.live able to do that now? Is any of the others, Rubrik or whoever else is kind of in that space, able to do that? That's what I want to know, right? I mean, stop selling me yet another data management platform and insights platform and analytics platform. And no, look, AI is the latest thing, right? I want to be able to use AI, to dig into my data without me having to be an SQL language expert and have to script the thing and in order to produce the report in a format that I want and all that kind of nonsense. But beyond that, we should be beyond that now. The Gen AI models should be able to, translate that, use MCP or whatever other protocol, API to go and talk to that backend database and get me the freaking data that I want. Yeah, and I want it right now. I don't want it yesterday, or I don't want it tomorrow. I want it yesterday. I want it like immediately, right? And I'm a sales guy. I'm not a techie necessarily. Yeah, and I can't even work Excel properly. Right, but I want to be able to sit in front of a prompt, on my Snowflake or DataOps platform and say, yeah, give me all the sales forecasts from, all sales figures from the last 20 years, interject them with blah blah blah, and write a really complex, prompt to get the data that I want, and then the agent or the Snowflake platform will go, oh yeah, I know where that is. That's in that Oracle database over there, and then the CRM database, which is an SQL server, holds all our blah blah, or app dynamic. Sorry, not app dynamics. What's it called? Can't remember the Dynamics 365 or whatever it's called, the Microsoft one. That's our CRM. So I'll go and get that as well and cross-reference it. There you go. There's the results. Right? That's what I want. Now, are we able to do that? I don't think so. I don't see anybody declaring that and shouting that from the highest mountain.
I mean, I think the challenges we've got are that it's all what you've just asked for requires quite a lot more discipline in terms of the sort of prompts that you need to give, and I think, are you looking for, if you're looking for suggestions and sort of have a look at this and have a look at that, but again, if it's too many variables, I think, at the moment for the current crop of AI agents to be able to deal with that one with a level of confidence. I think they can do it, but then they might well start to hallucinate a little bit, all those sort of issues. So I think, again, go back to the podcast with the Sierra CEO. He was talking about the difference between, can I get an AI agent to book you into for a doctor's appointment? Yes. Could I get an AI agent to do the initial triage? No. Currently, it's a similar sort of thing here, that if you make it too complex at them, if we jump in too fast, you'll get some really strange results.
All right, so let's just in interest of time, let's move on. Our 10th category is data center. Now, I don't have a huge amount here, there is a ton of data. There's lots of information. I picked up so many predictions and things like that. But for me, I think it boils down to, things like sovereignty affecting kind of how we do data center in 2026 and beyond, at least for the foreseeable future. That's kind of, one of the projections. On the AI side, we've talked about, data centers or hyperscale. The hyperscalers doing their sort of what I call an AI scale, data centers. For sovereignty, for better or worse, it's there. People are wanting to go down that particular route. I'm not going to get into the argument of and the merits or the whatevers of that. I think that's a separate discussion, not for today. But for AI, my concern now is that I'm seeing a lot of people saying, since fourth quarter last year, we saw a lot more discussions around inference, and people saying we are now in the age of inference. Even NVIDIA has been saying that, and their recent investment, shall we say, in Grok, that's Groq. Q, not K. So it's not the Elon Musk thing, it's not the XAI stuff, but the company, which is apparently, I don't know enough about their models, I'm not really that familiar, but they apparently do more kind of inference-based stuff, and that's kind of where their research is. And they, NVIDIA clearly had $20 billion spare in the back pocket, so they kind of invested in the way they're swimming in money at the moment. They invested in Grok. And that's, like I said, more on the inference side. And, Jensen Huang's kind of said, is it Jensen Huang? I don't remember the name now. The CEO of NVIDIA. He's said that, we are now in the inference, Jensen Huang. Don't want to get sued or something by getting
but that has been a very rapid change, certainly in the last quarter or two.
Yes,
because if you look at some of the people like Deloitte looking at what's the projections for for growth of inferencing versus training. They weren't seeing that sort of flip over to more inferencing than training until 2027 at the earliest. And yet we're now seeing, implications, I think, that it will be sometime this year, if it's not happening already, which was an interesting one. I'm not sure about that. But for me, then, that there are, if we talk about data center, and I've got to focus on the physical side of data
I know
centers.
you have a soft spot for data centers.
A soft spot for a very solid object. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, um,
How would I'm trying to, I can't
you
visualize that.
know, it's like I've got a soft spot for you. Yes, it's a bog in the west of Ireland.
Yeah.
It's bury you. Um, Interestingly, um, the thing that the company called DC Byte, which is a sort of consultancy stroke, yeah, I mean, I think they're one of the leading lights in terms of understanding what's happening on the physical build side of data centers. And what they're highlighting, because you get these projections for data center, growth of it doubling between now and 2030 in terms of megawatts and whatever, and huge investments.
Yeah.
And you and I've had this discussion. I've said, this is the year where, the digital digital speed meets human sort of what do you call it? Sort of delay. I mean, human. What's the word? I've lost the word. I had it once upon a time where where you could go.
We'll put it in the description if you remember it.
Human. But it basically, they're running into roadblocks. And so there's a big gap, and what they're seeing is
digital software versus wetware or something.
Yeah,
Something like
but what DC Byte are showing is, and you can see the graph, and I'll send you the link to it, is the link between here's what everybody said they're going to be building over the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And here's where it looks as if we're going to be able to deliver. And that graph is getting wider and wider. So that's one. But the second, area, which I think is interesting from an inferencing point of view, is that it will change where and how we build data centers.
Yes.
But it isn't necessarily going to, people say, oh, well, that could ease the pressure on the grids. No, I don't think it will, because I think there'll be that much inferencing going on.
No, I think that will continue. I think
that will
pressure
continue.
Will still be there.
It's human. It was digital speed versus human inertia. Sorry, that's
okay.
Those are the terms I was looking for. But so I think we're going to see an awful lot of that. So I think we will actually start to see, that growth prediction being forecast down. Now, what that does to the financial models of the people who've already started to invest in this, good question.
Yes.
Again,
so we did pick up on the Oracle thing back in the October episode, right? So
and they've already been affected by that because their stock took one hell of a beating in the last few weeks, on the grounds that they were not going to be able to deliver the benefits of that.
Right.
All the money that they've sunk into it, or have they sunk into it? You don't know what's going on. So I think what we're going to see, more effective models. DeepSeek already made it, a more efficient model being done.
Yeah.
I think we'll see improvements in efficiency. Yeah. I think inference will change the way in which data centers are built, much more modular, smaller, but nonetheless, the overall impact on the grids will still be the same, and therefore, So I think there are some challenges for AI generally, in the sense that if they need all this capacity, can we, as humans, with all the inertia involved in that, deliver on that in terms of the timescales? And that could have a knock-on effect on investors' ability or desire to invest and not call their loans in, and all those sort of things. So I think we're still in danger of there being a bit of a correction. I'm not going to say a bubble, but a correction in some of that which may slow down AI. Again, because the other inertia is from an inferencing perspective, is getting enterprises and everybody's data and processes and workflows in a position where AI makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So certainly for power, the demand will
Yeah,
continue to outstrip the supply
yeah,
capability. The winner, I think, out of this is I do see a lot more. There's been a lot of deals around UK data centers. So I think the UK is very well positioned for that, and I'm very happy with that. The danger that I was mentioning about, the world going into inference more and doing more inference, because we have been like training models for the last, sort of 2 years or so, 18 months to 2 years. The models themselves got a lot more clever. You got memory, you got context, you got insights, all that kind of sort of capabilities. So they don't really need that sort of level of education and training as was needed before. But so with the danger of kind of moving into inference is all these AI scale data centers or factories, gigafactories that are being built, like the AI gigafactory in Europe and various other ones. I think, as you said, those are quite static. They're just massive, colossal, data centers, and even the ones that the hyperscalers are building. Right, who's going to use that? If, as you said, if now inference needs to be on the edge, so things like edge AI needs to happen. The inference needs to be where the data is a lot more closely in order to get rid of the latency, right? So I think that's going to be a gap. There's going to be a chasm, I think, there between.
I think it will only be a problem if, I mean, at the moment the projections are still that LLM training will continue to grow.
Mm.
So if it does,
hang on, but that's different. Training, doing research on LLMs and Gen AI in general is different. There's a different type of workload from ABC company trying to implement an AI model for themselves for whatever purpose, right? So Stargate, for example, and what OpenAI is doing with Stargate, yeah, that makes sense. They got a goal. They want to achieve AGI, but everybody else doesn't want to research LLMs and models. They're just happy to take an open source model and just use it for themselves.
So I think, but they were actually saying that the training element of LLMs will continue to grow. Now, I'm not sure I believe it, because I think you'll get more efficient models anyway. In which case, that'll take it down. But we can argue that one till the cows come home. But there's no sign yet of a decline in LLM, the processing required for new or existing LLM training. So what's happening, of course, is that inferencing is jumping up hugely because everybody's suddenly realized we better make some money out of this. So everybody's focused on how the hell do we make money out of this?
Yeah. But the inferencing is not necessarily going to sit where you want it to sit.
No.
In your AI scale data center, people are going to say, I don't want it there. I want it over here.
But back to my other, DC byte graph. If we've projected all these Stargates and big data centers, even the ones in the UK, and we physically can't deliver them in the timescale, will they stop mid-project? And
they will only stop. I think they will only stop the progress of the research for things like AGI. So the likes of, and that's why really OpenAI just wants to build Stargate and then shut the world out. So the BPs and the Shells and the financial, JP Morgans, whatever of the world, yeah, sure, they can go in as well because they have specific needs. They have an HPC workload that they need to run, right? But like I said, that's not inference. That's research.
But again, I think we're at cross purposes here, because what I'm saying is that despite the fact that we think large language model training will continue on increasing, I think that will drop off for various reasons. And what we've seen from a projections point of view of the number of data centers and the amount of megawatts required for that type of market may well not come to fruition at all by 2030. Because but it'll switch to inferencing. It'll switch to something else, which may cause problems for the people who are trying to build the big ones. I mean, but also you're getting pushback from people. There's one of the I've just been reading up in the last day or so about an AI data center approval on the edge of the M25 that's in danger of being pulled because the government's taken a second look at it as if, oh, did we do our due diligence right in terms of power availability and all the other things? Well, if government, God help us, if the UK government gets involved in more investigations into those sort of areas, we'll never build a data center again.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it is a sign that potentially that huge increase in data centers that we've seen projected for 2030 may not come into fruition in that timescale. And if it does come to fruition, it will be in a very different format, i.e. with the inferencing.
As long as they don't draw their power from the Terminal 5 generator, then that's fine, because that's already got problems. It went down about 18 months ago, so no thank you.
God help us, and God help us if the jet stream stops running and we don't get any wind in future. We are stuffed. Let's not go there.
I think just my final point is that the AI scale kind of data centers, these gigafactories, yes, they need to be built, but I think I'm just hoping it's not going to be a build it and they will come, and then you build it and it's all sitting there, and yes, you have a few large oil companies, energy companies that kind of need to run an HPC workload, a couple of ones who are doing scientific research and cancer research, that kind of thing, and that's it. The rest of the data centers just sitting there twiddling thumbs, waiting for customers, because everybody said, I need my inference over here, not over there, not in that big massive thing. I need it next to my, where my data is being generated.
I mean, the time scale to develop and deliver one of these mega scale, gigafactories is so long that almost they can't do anything other than build it and hope they come. And that's the risk. That's the risk.
Yeah. I mean, I know that Stargate is well underway. Stargate is going to go live. I think if it's not already live, the first branch of that is already going to happen.
There is a lot that's ready to come on stream. But if you actually, dig into the figures for the 2030 projections, the number that are anywhere near coming into construction, let alone going live, this is where the gaps start to appear. And if they're not if they haven't put in spades into the ground yet, they may well get canned.
Yes, agreed. Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. All right, so next one, Paul, category is M&A, mergers and acquisitions.
Interesting to try and make predictions about that, other than the fact that
projections,
sorry,
not predictions.
Sorry,
perish the thought.
Yeah.
lashings of apologies. So my one is actually very simple. AI agents, and I think Cursor or Replete is going to be acquired this year. The whole vibe coding space is just going crazy. And yes, there's a lot of pushback from people. No, it's not going to work. It's going to, create a whole load of whatever and security holes. And look, it's moving forward. There's some people out there knocking at some stuff, and this is just their own homebrew projects that are really effing cool. They're really effing cool. I mean, yeah, sure, they're not kind of enterprise stuff, but you can see that the grassroots stuff is building out. People are taking it and doing things with it that they should be doing. That's the kind of thing that I want to see kind of code and AI agents to be doing with, through vibe coding. So, and they're not experts at, not experts at kind of, Rust and all these other languages, and they're not developers necessarily by trade, but they are, they are knocking out some really good stuff.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I've seen, a mate of mine who I've known for some time, using this sort of approach for a completely new startup in the sort of AI space that he's
Mm.
going. But he's posted an awful lot of stuff on LinkedIn, which I ought to share with you, which is the sort of what he's found as a result of doing that. So I think
Mm.
it's great because not only does it show people are, as you say, starting to do that, but it's showing where the limitations are currently and what we've got to do to try and fix those.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I think, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's still a long way to go, but the naysayers of it and the people are kind of pushing back on it. And I had that recently at the tech industry forum. So I had to set my panel colleagues straight on that because I just felt, hang on a minute, this is not, you're kind of ganging up on vibe coding and whatever here, and that's not necessarily the way to look at it. There's still, yes, there's still, it's at an infancy, but in terms of what it can do and the achievements already being made, and like I said, those people taking it away from Cursor and Replit and all these other platforms that NA10 and what have you that give you the framework or the IDE, the platform for the development and so on of those types of applications, and just doing it themselves at home, just home brewing something, like I said, hand knitting some bits together, and then saying, look what this can do. Yeah, and it's really great. I think John Hammett, who's the guy who's been on my channel from AWS. Shout out to John. He's done a couple of projects recently which I was very impressed with, and he posted them. He's open sourced them all on GitHub, and you can go and download them. So again, I'll drop the links for those in the description for you. It was just kind of, again, just having a go at something and just trying it, and it looks really cool. The achievements from that. So for me, we can't kind of discount that. We need to be, we need to embrace that and see where it's going to go and what the technology is going to be achieving going forward. And that's why the reason why I'm saying is that, yes, Anthropic has got, Claude Code. At the time of recording the second part, OpenAI has announced 5.3 with Codex. So that's their version of kind of Claude Code. So that's the that's the development, the code generation one. And yes, to a degree, again, GitHub Copilot and so on are kind of all doing that. I think what will probably happen is one of those is going to go and acquire Cursor or Replit or somebody just to enhance what they're doing. They're just either going to merge it in, or ideally they're just going to have it as a subsidiary that just specializes in that, and then drop a lot more research money into, a lot more funding into the research, so that they can improve it a lot more quickly and be closer, more tightly coupled with OpenAI or Microsoft or whoever it is who's going to do the acquiring. Yeah,
I agree. I mean,
that's my projection for this year.
Yeah, my projection as well, which would be that the major SaaS vendors will also be looking to startups that are providing AI agent type development environments in vertical markets. So they'll basically be buying in that combination of rapid rapid development of code, but with a vertical focus. So I think you can see SAP and Workplace and Salesforce and everybody looking to buy up smaller, startups. I think that will be a trend during 2026 to see across a number of spaces because it's moving so fast. The bigger companies can't move at the same pace unless they buy it.
Yes, exactly, and that's a perennial thing, right?
Yeah,
we talk we talk about that all the time.
Yeah,
when it comes to that,
I suppose we ought to look and think, are there more mature areas where you're likely to see mergers and sort of acquisitions that are probably driven by desperation rather than aspiration.
you mean like Confluent?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, you sort of look at it and think, either across database, through the database market, will there be some sort of consolidation. So I think there's a number of markets. Databases probably is one where consolidation might start to come in.
Yeah.
I don't know who's going to be the buyer and who's going to be the person who's being bought.
Yeah. So, I mean, we said earlier about AI agents augmenting existing platforms, which is what we had with when LLMs and Gen AI sort of came on the scene, right? But there isn't anybody who's kind of, I mean, apart from the platform providers like OpenAI and Anthropic and others who N8N and so on, who kind of gives you that capability, who just say, we're the AI agent factory. So you take what we do, write your own stuff, and go and use it for whatever you want. There isn't somebody else that's kind of necessarily doing that. I think if there was, they'd have got acquired this year, definitely, because somebody's kind of leading that AI agent development. I think there is frameworks that help you to do it, but you have to take it yourself and do it yourself. Unlike Cursor and Replete and others in that space, who are platforms for vibe coding. They are specifically for you to go and register and whatever, or free tier or whatever it is, and put your credit card in, and then you can start vibe coding on their platform. They API back to, Anthropic or OpenAI, whoever it is, or maybe their own platform. I don't know how their architecture works. But point being is they provide a vibe coding platform. And when you're providing something, you're not just in part of a movement in a particular direction, like vibe coding or AI code gen or whatever it is, you will get acquired this year. So if you're not in a movement, you are providing a service to do something, like to generate vibe coding in my platform, like Cursor and Replete and people like that, you're going to get acquired, I think, this year. That's my view.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I think that's right. But I think there will be a market for people buying ready-made capabilities, like in vertical markets.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always the case, as we said, it's perennial that, that sort of thing happens, right? Because people are kind of, vendors kind of get stuck with whatever they're doing, and then somebody else over there pioneers something else, and they've run away with 6 months, 18 months into it, they've run away with it.
The one that intrigues me is, and you may well laugh at this one, is would the likes of an HP or a Lenovo or a Dell start to look at some of the component manufacturers, who are doing innovative things in terms of, because we talk about AI factories, and what have you got to do to your AI? What have you got to do to your infrastructure to make it ready for that? And we're looking at, very different memory, very different cooling, very different networking. I mean, silicon, photonics and all those sort of issues. And I just wonder whether, you're moving from it's not being so much about chips, it's being about packaging up the rest of it to make it work in an AI environment.
Yeah.
Because you and I think we're both fundamentally in agreement about this, is that where where the major OEMs have been in the past, and in the near past as well, is that they really haven't understood, or don't appear to have understood, what you need to put together for a proper AI implementation, from a hardware perspective.
Yeah.
And you want to see, so their problem is, can we develop the skills, or do I need to go and buy somebody? And I think they might need to go and buy somebody. Now, you might think that's throwing good money after bad, but we'll see.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I sniggered at the mention of the names, which is very something we might revisit this year in terms of kind of where they are, how perilous they're looking down the precipice.
Yeah, they're not about to go out of business in the next 2 to 5 years.
No. Yeah.
But they've got to do something to change the trajectory. Say that with your false teeth in.
Yes.
And in order to do that, I think they might need to buy. And who are they going to buy? They're going to buy the specialists who are putting together the configurations, if you like, that
Yes.
really work.
Do you know what? I wouldn't be surprised, is my projection for that space. And I was thinking about this before because of the recent CES announcements in January. I wouldn't be surprised if, Lenovo, HPE, whoever, Dell, whatever, announce ARM-based processors, ARM-based servers for this year, because they've now done it on the consumer side, on the client side, so notebooks or laptops, some people like to call them. CES, they announced desktops. So again, it's, SFF, small form factor desktops with ARM processors, that whole sort of Snapdragon thing that they're doing, the Qualcomm thing, with Windows, running Windows 11. So it's the AI PCs, the AI plus PCs or whatever they call them. And those have been impressive. The price hasn't been, because they're aiming for that sort of Mac, that Mac sort of category of, a grand plus, 1,000, plus in terms of cost. But whoever's bought them, whoever's actually got them, has been impressed with everything: performance, battery, look and feel, design, everything. Right. So that category is proving successful. I wish they would do like a more budget-friendly version. And I don't mean like drop it like £300, maybe like £500 or something like that. I'd buy one if they do it for that. But I also think the next thing for them to do with that ecosystem, that Windows and ARM ecosystem, is that it will be server-based. And it's not new. They've tried this, but I think it was HP, before they became HPE and HP Inc., tried to do this years ago. I can't remember what the project was. They did a whole sort of thing about it. But they've not done it since then. Or that's kind of, disappeared and gone away. They've gone back to the old sort of Wintel sort of thing again.
Yeah, you see, I think the growth of inferencing and the potential for modular data centers, literally the ability to sort of roll them in would these whole sort of facilities in would give an opportunity. But I mean, they've got a number of challenges. A price point is one. Understanding it's the understanding of what they've got to put together, I think, is what they need to buy.
Yeah. I mean,
and then we'll see if they can do it at the price point. And this would be for small modular data centers and enterprises still wanting to do something on-prem with very small inferencing machines, but we'll see. But I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, like I said, I remember HP doing it a while back. I can't remember what the project was, and I don't know if they still do it or there's a line of those. I mean, clearly they do. Their ProLiants are all sort of Xeon based and what have you, as are sort of Lenovo's and was it Moonshot? Was it or something like that? I think HPE Moonshot.
Oh, I think
Moonshot server was is that the name?
Rings a bell.
Yeah, I think that was the the ARM based. But yeah, anyway, so point being is that I'll try and dig up some info on that at some point.
Yeah.
But the idea is, I think, that if that's been successful here with the cost savings, energy savings, performance, and so on, why shouldn't we do it on servers as well? And who cares what Windows Server or Red Hat Enterprise Linux is running on? I shouldn't really care, right? And if I do want to do my own inference and run it all in my own data center, surely this is the most efficient way to do it for Gen AI workloads, right?
Yeah.
So that's another projection, and we'll see if they pick up on that. I mean, it'll be actually quite interesting if they do. That will certainly keep them, I think, in the race for this year. Not just hopes and prayers.
Well, and it will give their enterprise customers a route forward.
Exactly.
And I don't see them suddenly going into
No.
brand new sort of customer bases, but I think it will give their, as enterprises suddenly get into the inferencing and starting to make things work,
Yeah.
if if those vendors can get their act together, there is a good market for them there.
Yeah. And again, they've responded by doing the usual, which is, oh, everybody wants a GPU. Sure, we can put a GPU in our servers. But who cares?
It's not about chips anymore. It's
No.
about the way in which you package the whole lot up.
Yeah, and who cares about that, right? It's it's the whole CUDA thing from NVIDIA. It's the environment, it's the models, it's putting it all together and just saying, yeah, come and buy these servers. Now they got GPUs in them, and slap an NVIDIA sticker on the front. Well, NVIDIA's more than happy to give you as many stickers as you like.
Yeah.
Stick
As long as
you
each
put them wherever you want.
as long as each sticker has a chip, a processor.
Yeah, with it. Yeah, that goes with it. Yeah, yeah. So buy a £10,000 sticker. Yeah, for NVIDIA. So yeah, sure, you can do that. I mean, you've got PCIe, yeah, slots or whatever they're called these days.
But I think they're going to have to go beyond. They're going to have to look at the way in which they build their servers in a somewhat different way. I think than.
Well, this was the thing. This was Lenovo tried to do this. Lenovo, I don't remember if the others did. Lenovo certainly realizes, and because they're sort of Asian and Chinese sort of roots, they had that sort of connection with those vendors, that do the stripped server without a cover, and it's got the PSU at the back of it, and not the PSU, the battery. It runs on a battery and it sits where the PSU, the Google data center, Facebook data center, hyperscale data center type designs, right? And they've again, one EU commodity, one dies, they just take it and throw it away and put another one in there. They don't really care about diagnosing and RCAing it and stuff like that. They did do that. I think they released, I think this was when I was actually working there. We did have a model, at least it was announced. I can't remember if they came to market, but they didn't do anything more with it. This was the growth of cloud. This is when cloud was taking off, right? So that was their kind of response, but it was a very mooted, kind of thing. It didn't really kind of scale and grow, and they couldn't really get those deals. They couldn't go to AWS or to Microsoft and say, hey, build your next hyperscale data center using our servers, right? Because no matter, I think, how they did it, it wasn't cheap enough.
No.
And the Chinese vendors,
or flexible enough.
Yeah, and Foxconn and the rest could, that's how their business model was geared. Yeah. It is geared to build 1,000 iPhones. It is geared to build 1,000 Samsung Galaxy whatevers. It is geared to build 1 million, servers for AWS or whoever else, right? So anyway,
but again, the other problem for the likes of the major OEMs was that AWS, Facebook, all the others did their own putting it all together. They did their own builds.
Yeah, they did it, and they just gave it to someone and said, "There's the blueprints. Just build it like that for me."
Build it like that. So they get processors from one place, cabling, everything they needed, power supply units, whatever. They got them and they built them themselves. Enterprises are not going to do that.
No.
And if they do inference and they don't want to go to, one of the major cloud providers or wherever to do that, even if they're going to use Cola, they're going to have to use people. They won't want to build it. They want people to do it for them. And it's those. I mean, you get a Supermicro might come in and finally get its act together. And
or it could be that actually what they'll do is they'll say, well, we trained it, we did the pilot on AWS, so let's just run it on the AWS factory. They recently announced Factory or EKS Anywhere, or, because it's the same ecosystem. We know the tools, we know the services, our scripts will be the same, our Terraform stuff, our cloud formation, whatever it is, it's all going to be the same. And the terminology and everything else is exactly all the same. So why should I now, because now I'm in inference mode, why should I do that on something completely alien? Yeah.
No, indeed.
Anyway, so category 12. Now, this was like an extra category because there was a lot of IT industry predictions that came in. Paul, you picked up on Deloitte. What was that about?
Well, they had their sort of insights for 2026. So, I mean, they were fine. But they were looking at a number of tech trends. So, their first one was AI goes physical, navigating the convergence of AI and robotics. And actually, I was already on board with this one very much. I've written a couple of places where I think, 2026 is going to be the year of hardware, and I don't just mean servers. I think it is when we start to see, more advanced AI capabilities ending up in a lot more bits of hardware, whether that's the phones on our wrists, health monitors, through to robots in the factory, or even the sort of robots that we're seeing coming out of China, particularly at the moment, that they're doing all sorts of jobs. So I think and then you look at cars, you think taxis, Wave in the UK. Looks like it's going to get a trial this year, and therefore the physical devices that need to go into that car, that automobile, that taxi, to make it work in the streets of London, because they're going to do the trials in the streets of London. You think, oh, jeepers creepers.
Baptism of fire.
Baptism of fire. So interesting in the sense that Deloitte said AI goes physical, and I thought, yeah, I absolutely get that, because AI doesn't make sense really until you start getting. I say it doesn't make sense. We're at the sort of stage where we're doing administrative process flows and that sort of work and decision support and those sort of areas, but physically starting to interact with the physical world around us, I think is going to be an interesting year. The second one they had was the Agentic Reality Check, preparing for a silicon-based workforce. And this is interesting, is that some of my colleagues in Bloor actually gave a presentation at the Houses of Parliament in the beginning of January, right at the beginning of the year, first week, on, what we're calling the fusion era, but fundamentally, what are the challenges and what are the issues that this reset is going to have, and how do you get AI and people working together? And so I think the reality check is twofold. One is a reality check for AI adoption, is it's going to take longer than people think. But the other is for businesses, is for businesses to start thinking, how do I work out what happens if I can get, so for example, what we're seeing with some of the AI agents currently is reshoring of some of the sort of call center staff. So actually the impact is on agents in India, not needed anymore, because that sort of first level contact is starting to be, disaggregated. So, so I think it's a big year, I think, for that, and we will see more and more agents coming in to the simple tasks, and therefore you've got this reality check that says, what do I do to make sure I bring my workforce along with me? I think that's going to be a big issue in the year. So that was it. So this is the predictions are very AI oriented from Deloitte. I mean, the third was AI infrastructure reckoning, optimizing compute strategy in the age of inference economics. Well, we've been discussing that, haven't
Yeah.
we? I mean,
Yeah.
so they've highlighted the same sort of issues that we've been looking at in terms of the way inferencing changes the ball game somewhat, and other areas of constraints that AI is going to run into in terms of generating the sort of power that's required. The Great Rebuild. I mean, their fourth one. They had a number of these. Six. The AI and the Great Rebuild, architecting an AI native tech organization.
Mm.
Yeah, again, you talk about vibe coding, and some sort of pushback from people saying it's never going to work, and there's a fear element that oh, we
Yeah.
can't do away with our programmers. And I think, what Deloitte is saying and what I'm hearing people saying is that it refactors where the work takes place and how the work takes place, and you've got to get away from the thinking that I'm just going to lose my job. And part of the challenge here is for people looking at how they make themselves valuable in the new economy, and how companies help them to do that. Otherwise, there's going to be a problem. So I think, they then went on the AI. The next one was the AI dilemma: securing and leveraging AI for cyber defense. And we've already sort of touched on that. Is it and people are at the stage of thinking: is AI a problem or the solution to a problem?
Right. Yeah.
I think in 2026, if they're thinking it's a problem rather than the solution to a problem, they're probably looking in the wrong place. They need to be looking at how they do that. And then finally, their sixth one was cutting through the noise. Tech signals worth tracking as AI advances, and we'd have to go straight to that to look and see what they said. I can't remember exactly what they said. Areas that keep tech trends. Most of them are foundation models reaching a plateau. So what they're saying is, our foundation, the models that exist, have they reached a plateau? Are there going to be some new ones coming along? Keep an eye on that. New data, synthetic data, and old data. And this is one that keeps coming up that sort of says, do we have to keep adding new and newer data, or do we use synthetic data to make these models work better? Do I need as much data? So I think they're saying, keep an eye on what's happening on that front.
I mean, the synthetic data one has been around for a while.
It has been around for a while, yes.
It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Everybody keeps saying that.
Yeah, we've talked about them. They were talking about the rise of edge AI and on-device processing, and again, you and I batted that one backwards and forwards between us quite a bit in terms of what do we mean by edge AI, and they do sort of separate out what is basically on-device processing from edge AI.
Yeah.
So we've had that. So yeah, I think these are all sort of things that we've already talked about. AI agent privacy trade-off. The fully capable personal AI assistants require unprecedented access to personal data. What do you do about that? And that access is already being granted.
True.
But do we know it's being granted? All those sort of issues that we need to get to grips with. Yeah, and the interesting one. This is where search is coming under pressure now. Traditional search from AI is coming under pressure.
Sure.
So rather than doing SEO, you're doing GEO. Generative AI. Yeah.
Well, I mean, things like Google Search has already got Gemini.
It has, yeah.
At the top.
If you use Bing, you're getting, Copilot, throw stuff in there. And I think, I don't know about you, but my personal, use of it has changed over the course of this last year.
Mm.
When it first started to happen, I was much more along the lines of, I'm not sure about that. I want to go to the original source, and I'm not sure that we should be burning our, planet's resources just on flipping search, for goodness sake. But the more you get into it and the more refined it gets, the better you start to use it.
Yes.
You
Yeah, yeah,
start,
yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
and
Yeah, I
and
agree.
and this is another area where it will become, and this is why one of the things that I haven't mentioned so far in that was this idea, and I think it was Johnny Ive is looking at a completely new devices that don't use a screen or a keyboard at all, so
Okay.
that you interact with it, verbally. Um,
Oh, okay. Yes.
and so I think, this was another one where you're getting into some of the hardware elements. We could well see a different piece of hardware this year
Right.
from Johnny I. I think it's probably 2027 or 2028 before we see anything.
Mm.
But again, everything's moving very, very fast. So it was just a range of things, but it was almost totally AI dominated. So it's almost as if, well, projections are that AI is
Yeah.
going to dominate our life and our conversations for the next year and beyond.
Yeah, definitely. So you did mention you mentioned these other guys. Let me try and get the where was I now? Completely lost it. Hang on. So we talked about data center, which was one of the categories, but then you mentioned, I think during that you mentioned DC Byte, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they've done. I think you sent me a link to that. So we'll include that, guys, in the data center section, because they've kind of done their own sort
Yeah.
of outlook as
Yeah.
well. So you've kind of touched on that a little bit.
And you've got the Deloitte one that you.
I do have the Deloitte one. I've dug up a different Deloitte one, which was a Tech Trends Report 2026. So Deloitte's been quite busy, I think, with the report. So the one that you have is the one that you shared with me, was the what was it? Tech, Media, and Telco, which was a November 2025 predictions for 2026, of course. And then the one I had, which came into my sort of orbit, if you like, was the Deloitte Tech Trends Report 2026, which is I think it was a December.
It is. I mean, that's the one I've been reading from. Is that one from 2020? The Tech Trends Report is the one I've actually focused on here.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
It was more
Perfect.
it was more up to
Yeah.
date. That's what
Perfect.
That's what I was
Perfect.
talking.
Okay. All right. Well, you've covered that then, so that's great. Okay. Yeah. We did. Sorry. Yeah. I'm just looking. I'm just trying to get to the list here. Yeah. That's fine. So yes, I think. I mean, these things are. Yeah. I find Deloitte's ones and even some of the others are kind of tend to be a little bit sort of further out, but they seem to be a lot more grounded this time around. With these ones that we've kind of just gone through, this seems to be a little bit more grounded than usual. So a bit more pragmatic, I think, the way that they're kind of looking at it. And the one I've looked at, the one that you've read out from, and that I looked at, it's 6 chapters, and they're effectively their own separate reports each.
Yeah.
Because there's different authors, different research, whatever, and they are huge in terms of the content. And there's graphs, there's stats, there's numbers, there's all sorts of stuff in there, which is fantastic. So we may revisit some of them, because they'll obviously be relevant for the for the year. So we may revisit one or two of the chapters in the future, but I think they're really good. Now, the other ones I picked up on there was an IBM 2026 predictions, 5 trends for 2026. I'm not going to go through all of those because that's quite a lot to focus. There was one from Yahoo, cloud AI trends for this year, and there was somebody on LinkedIn who put out their own top 10 cloud trends as well. I won't go through all the details, but it was what I called a sort of a nobody's top 10 cloud trends for 2026, which was quite interesting. So we've tried to kind of get a spectrum here of, kind of the available trends. In terms of kind of turning these into projections, what can we sort of look at? What do we see? Going back to the Deloitte ones, I agree in terms of kind of AI getting physical. So we will get it physical in some shape or form. Maybe one or two of those applications will come to fruition this year. Certainly, in the factory or something, we might see the first sort of AIs doing just some very basic sort of stuff. I know at CES, again, back in January, they showed, I can't remember who it was now, showed, there was a robot that was folding clothes. So kind of folding all your washing basically for you. So there was different types of applications like that in terms of the AI sort of getting physical. On the agentic, I think we spoke about that. I don't think it's agentic. I think it's AI agents. People are jumping the gun on this. It's not going to be that simple to just go straight into agentic. Agentic is a kind of a whole different sort of approach to how you do it. The AI agents, and we talked about augmentation. I'm happy to project that for the year, but not anything more. And we've talked about that in FinOps and observability and various other areas, and more than and the sort of the existing SaaS platforms adopting that as well potentially. And I think that's all fine. I wouldn't say kind of AI infrastructure reckoning. I suppose it is to a degree what we discussed earlier about gigafactories and so on. Yeah, I'm really worried about that one. Not kind of worried as in, I'm going to lose money over it, but worried that I might be right in terms of projecting that one.
Yeah, it could go either way, I think, at the moment. And that's the difficulty, and the difficulty with projections is that there are too many variables in that particular one, I think, to
say. I agree.
In 2026, that's for sure.
Yeah, I agree. It's on a knife edge.
Yeah, it is.
But because it's moving so freaking quickly, we could see that like go one direction or the other in the next few weeks.
Yes,
that's how quickly this is going. By the end of Feb or mid-March, something, we could have actually an idea, and we could be back in a Cloud State of Play episode saying, actually, they are in trouble or they're not in trouble.
I mean, the Chinese may come up with a new LLM model that completely destroys the operating
model again,
of
OpenAI
and Anthropic.
Anthropic and so on. Yeah, well, I mean, let's see. My concern is this whole, like I said, the build the gigafactory and they will come. I'm not convinced now that, especially like NVIDIA, investing money in inference and people talking about inference and talking about, if I do inference, regardless of what it looks like or where it's going to sit or what platform is going to run on, I don't want it in that gigafactory. I want it close to my data, so I can reduce the latency and the data storage and things like that. Now, what does that, in terms of the application? What is that application? I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it's kind of a typical one might be processing the IoT stuff. So where we kind of used to do edge computing, so we could meet the IoT data where it was, now it's edge AI that will do that. Yeah, and whatever that entails, whatever that application entails, not just ingesting the data, but maybe allowing you to do other things with it as well. But at that edge.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, going back decades, we used to joke that fourth generation languages at a particular motor manufacturer would enable them to change the color of the car you'd ordered as it was on the production line. Oh my God, I didn't want it red, I wanted blue. If you were too late and you get it half red and half blue, but again, you can see, and you think about supply chains. You think, supply chains reacting very, very rapidly to changes in the environment around it. AI at the edge going, oh my goodness me, that lorry's out on the road now, I need to redirect it. Literally like that. So I think those sort of applications you could start to see, as well as a lot of inferencing going on the AI agents front. Literally inferencing on AI agents, I think.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Workflow development.
Yeah. So so those are kind of our look at some of the predictions. We put out some of our projections based on kind of some of the data that we've gathered in these reports, but also just kind of some of our own views as well. I think we're pretty much there. We've covered, I think, all the 12 categories. Paul, anything else that you wanted to add at all?
No, I think I've run out of steam.
I was just going to say, so
our brain hurts.
Yes, no, I appreciate that. Well, I mean, thank you as always, Paul. So I really appreciate your insights. It has been a marathon run. I feel like I need a holiday now. I put my feet up and make a cup of tea or something and relax. But yeah, I really appreciate your insights and all the data and stuff that we've gathered. So like I said, we're going to try and include as much of this stuff in the description of the video. Like I said, I know that I'm not going to be able to fit this into the description of the video. YouTube is not that generous with the description, so look out for any pinned comments as well under the video itself, and I'll try and cram in as much as I can there. I mean, maybe something else would be, learning about your predictions and projections for the year. Let us know what you guys think. Drop us something in the comments. Let us know what's kind of, of interest to you. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Please support the channel all the usual ways, and we will see you next time. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support me. You may also want to check out some of the other videos on this channel. Bye for now.